Chapter 1911. Yang Lin and the other two had already rushed in front of Xiqian. Three powerful forces charged toward Xiqian, about to crush him. Xiqian's expression was calm, and his eyes were filled with disdain. At this moment, Xiqian suddenly took a step forward and laughed. "Come, have a taste of my sword's sharpness." As he spoke, the profound qi in his body surged into the green profound sword like a tidal wave. In the next moment he slashed a sword to the end. Xiqian was stunned, because this sword did not have any strength. What was going on? Before Xiqian could think further, Yang Lin and the other two's powerful forces drowned him. Rumble! Xiqian was sent flying tens of thousands of meters away. At this moment, everyone was stunned. What was going on? Xiqian, who had stopped, had his body completely shattered. At this moment, his eyes were lifeless, and his mind was blank. After obtaining the green profound sword, he had been studying it with some scholars of the temporal temple, and had never used it personally. Therefore, he did not know that he could not use this sword. On the other side, Yang Lin said solemnly, "That sword is strange." Xiao Tian nodded. At this moment, Xiqian, who was far away, suddenly swung the green profound sword fiercely. However, there was no strength in the green profound sword. Xiqian stopped and he understood. He could not use this sword at all. Thinking of this, Xiqian roared angrily, "Yi Xian." On the other side, Yang Lin said solemnly, "He has been tricked." At this moment, Xiqian suddenly threw the green profound sword in his hand towards Yang Lin and the other two. Xiqian stared at Yang Lin and the other two. "The sword is yours." Yang Lin remained silent. Xiqian sneered, "What, you want to destroy my temporal temple? Forgive me for being blunt, but even if you can destroy my temporal temple today, how many experts does your Dao Mountain have left? Moreover, that Yi Xian is still secretly happy." Yang Lin glanced at Xiqian, then kept the green profound sword. "Let's go." With that he turned and left. Dao Mountain and the other experts also left hurriedly. On the battlefield, Xiqian said fiercely, "Find that Yi Xian at all costs. Find him." Not long later, all the experts of the temporal temple began searching frantically for Yi Xian. Yang Lin and the others had stopped in the starry sky. Yang Lin glanced at the green profound sword in his hand and said, "I'm unable to utilize this sword." Lin Xiao asked solemnly, "Can't you use it?" Yang Lin nodded, and then he passed the azure profound sword to Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao held the sword in his hand, and a short moment later, he frowned. "Looks like only Yi Xian can use this sword." "Yi Xian?" Xiao Tian suddenly said, "Find this Yi Xian." Soon, the experts of the Dao Mountain began searching for Yi Xian in a frenzy. Within the Xiaota, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. In front of him was a pile of soul crystals, which were currently being burned, and were constantly pouring power into his body. Gradually, a powerful aura emanated from Yi Xian's body. Break through to the seamless realm. After a long time, Yi Xian opened his eyes. At this moment, he had already absorbed 1,000,000 soul crystals. Xiaota suddenly asked, "Have you reached the seamless realm?" Yi Xian nodded. Now that he had reached the seamless realm, he was still unable to contend against Xiao Tian and the others. The difference in their realms was still too great. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Xiaota, tell me, how did Qing achieve 10 years in the pagoda, but 1 day outside?" Xiaota said, "I want to know, am I still a pagoda?" Yi Xian, Xiaota said, "Young lord, what are you trying to say?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Space-time conversion." Xiaota was slightly puzzled. "Space-time conversion?" Yi Xian nodded. "The space-time inside the pagoda is different from the space-time outside. It should be said that the space-time inside the pagoda is higher than the space-time outside. Do you understand what I mean?" Xiaota said, "I don't understand." Yi Xian was speechless. He pondered for a moment, then said, 10 years in the pagoda, 1 day outside. This means that the space-time inside the pagoda is different from the space-time outside. Or in other words, the space-time inside the pagoda is of a higher grade than the space-time outside. Xiaota said in a deep voice, Be more direct. Yixian said, if I merge with you, is it equivalent to merging with this mysterious space-time created by Qing? Xiaota hesitated, then said, do you want to try? Yixian nodded, I think I can try, but I need your cooperation. Xiaota said in a deep voice, will it be dangerous? Yixian said, probably not. Come, Xiaota, let's merge again. Xiaota turned into a golden light and disappeared into Yixian's forehead. Bang! Yixian's entire body started to tremble violently, and his body gradually started to become illusory. Moreover, the space-time around him actually started to vanish bit by bit, and even the 9th layer of space-time started to vanish bit by bit. However, Yixian's face instantly turned pale, because he noticed that his body was slightly unable to endure the space-time within Xiaota. It didn't take long for Yixian to release Xiaota. He couldn't endure it. At this moment, his forehead was covered in sweat, and his entire body had split apart. Xiaota spoke in a low voice, young master, I don't think it's possible. Yixian shook his head, it's possible. However, I can't endure it for too long. As he spoke, he sat down cross-legged and started to heal himself. 2 hours later, Yixian's injuries were more or less healed, and then he merged with Xiaota once more. To be more precise, he merged with the space-time within Xiaota. During those few breaths of time, Yixian hurriedly sensed the mysterious space-time. However, it was only for a few breaths of time. After a few breaths of time, he had to start healing himself, and then continue with the merging. Just like that, time passed by bit by bit. Yixian tried again and again. After countless attempts, he could finally borrow Xiaota's strength to merge with the mysterious space-time. However, he could only endure for 3 breaths of time. After 3 breaths of time, he must separate from it. Otherwise, his body would be directly destroyed. Moreover, he needed to borrow Xiaota's strength. After merging with the mysterious space-time, Yixian began to try to use the mysterious space-time. He tried many times, and finally, he could use the mysterious space-time's pressure. This made Yixian extremely excited, because he realized that the mysterious space-time's pressure could easily destroy the 9th layer of space-time. In the following period of time, Yixian tried again and again. Unfortunately, he couldn't enter the mysterious space-time's abyss, nor could he change the mysterious space-time structure. Not only that, he couldn't even feel the mysterious space-time's density. He could only use the mysterious space-time's pressure. However, this was enough for him. Of course, even if he wanted to use the mysterious space-time's pressure, he still needed to borrow Xiaota's strength. Simply put, if he threw out the pagoda now, even the 9th layer of space-time could be easily destroyed. Yixian sighed. This Xiaota was finally useful. Without thinking too much, Yixian left Xiaota. As soon as he left Xiaota, the space in front of him shook violently. Yixian frowned slightly. So fast. At this time, a middle-aged man walked out from the space in front of him. The person who came was the Yang clan leader, Wang Lin. Wang Lin stared at Yixian. I've been looking for you for so long. Yixian suddenly opened his palm, and Xiaota appeared in his hand. In the next moment, he tossed Xiaota out, and Xiaota transformed into a golden ray of light. In the distance, Wang Lin frowned slightly. In the next moment, his expression changed drastically, and he suddenly put his palms together and pressed them forward. Bang! In an instant, the first layer to the 8th layer of space-time around him condensed into a space-time wall. Xiaota arrived with a bang. Bang! The space-time wall in front of Wang Lin shattered, and at the same time, Wang Lin transformed into nothingness. Yixian was stunned when he saw this. Is it that terrifying? Before this, he didn't know how strong the mysterious space-time's pressure was. He only knew that it wasn't weak, but he hadn't expected it to be so strong. Instantly killing a life-soul realm expert? Yixian was extremely excited. Without thinking too much, Yixian put Xiaota away, turned around, and ran. He could only use it once, and he had to heal for 2 hours after using it, because the exhaustion was truly too great. Not long after Yixian vanished with Xiaota, Xiao Tian and Lin Xiao appeared here, and they remained silent as they gazed at the nearby space-time hole. Yang Lin was gone. Lin Xiao spoke solemnly, "It couldn't have been Yi Xian, right?" Xiao Tian shook his head. "He doesn't have that strength. It might have been the woman who saved him earlier." Lin Zhao's expression was quite solemn. Since he was able to kill Yang Lin without anyone noticing, then his strength. Xiao Tian's expression was quite unsightly. Lin Xiao spoke solemnly, "Why don't we return the sword to him?" Xiao Tian spoke fiercely, "Will he let us go if we return it?" "He won't. We have irreconcilable enmity with him now, so he won't let us go even if we beg for mercy. Moreover, my Xiao clan can't bow and scrape to him." Lin Xiao spoke solemnly, "My Lin clan can't do that either." Xiao Tian gazed into the distance with an icy cold expression. "I'm going to the divine Dao nation." Lin Xiao frowned slightly. "The divine Dao nation?" Xiao Tian gazed at the green profound sword in his hand and said, "I'm going to give this sword to the divine Dao nation. Doesn't Yi Xian have the ability to do so? He should go ask for it from the divine Dao nation." Lin Xiao hesitated for a moment and said, "Are you really going to give it to them?" Xiao Tian nodded. "This sword is useless in our hands. Why don't we give it to the divine Dao nation and let that fellow, Yi Xian, become enemies with the divine Dao nation?" As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings and said, "Let's go right now." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Lin Xiao hesitated for a moment and said, "I'll go with you." As soon as he finished speaking, he hurriedly chased after Xiao Tian. Yang Lian's death had terrified both of them. After all, Yang Lin was in existence on the same level as them, yet he died soundlessly. In other words, the person standing behind Yi Xian could kill them soundlessly as well. At this moment, they'd finally come back to their senses. On the other hand, the temporal temple was still searching madly for Yi Xian. 2 hours later, Yi Xian left Xiao Ta amidst the starry sky. He gazed at Xiao Ta in his hand and roared with laughter, "I'm finally invincible." Meanwhile, Xiao Ta said, "Young master, my intuition tells me that you won't last for more than 3 days before your enemies might advance again." Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 1912. Yi Xian's face darkened when he heard Xiao Ta's words. "Damn it, that's really possible." Right at this moment, a voice suddenly resounded from behind Yi Xian, "Young Master Yi." Yi Xian turned around and saw that space was torn apart a few hundred meters away, and then a middle-aged man walked out. It was the temporal temple's Yao Jun. Yi Xian was slightly taken aback when he saw Yao Jun, Elder Jun. Yao Jun glanced at the surroundings and said in a deep voice, "Young Master Yi, all the experts of the temporal temple are looking for you. It's best that you leave quickly." Yi Xian looked at Yao Jun and smiled, "Why are you helping me?" Yao Jun smiled bitterly, "Young Master Yi, don't ask so many questions. The temporal temple will find you in at most 10 minutes. Yao Jun's face changed drastically. "They're here. They're here. Young Master Yi, take care." After he finished speaking, he turned around and vanished on the spot. Right after Yao Jun left, the space a few hundred meters to the right of Yi Xian was torn apart, and a middle-aged man walked out. It was the temporal temple's temple master, Si Qian. A wisp of killing intent flashed in Si Qian's eyes when he saw Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, it's been so hard to find you." Yi Xian smiled. "Temple master Si Qian, is my sword useful?" Si Qian's face instantly became ferocious. "Yi Xian, how dare you trick me? Die, old man." As he spoke, he was about to attack when Yi Xian suddenly smashed his pagoda forward. "Strike first and gain the upper hand." Si Qian's face changed drastically when he saw Yi Xian's pagoda smashing towards him. He didn't defend himself, but instead took a step forward and punched out. He used all his strength because he didn't dare underestimate Yi Xian. Moreover, he felt danger. This punch caused the entire starry sky to boil and then be annihilated. As Yi Xian's pagoda came crashing down, rumble. The space where Si Qian resided was directly shattered, and he instantly retreated explosively. As soon as he stopped moving, only his soul remained. Moreover, his soul was vanishing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Si Qian was stunned. In the distance, Yi Xian's face was also a little pale. The consumption of using Xiaota was too great. He could only use Xiaota once in a short period of time. Meanwhile, Xichen suddenly spoke with a trembling voice. Yixian looked at Xichen. What do you mean why? Xichen asked crazily, why? Yixian thought for a moment and said, because I have backing. Xichen's expression froze. His soul disappeared and he died. Meanwhile, countless experts of the temporal temple had appeared here, and their expressions instantly became extremely unsightly when they saw Xichen perish. The hall master has been killed by Yixian? Yixian glanced at the experts of the temporal temple. Are all of you going to attack me together? All the experts of the temporal temple glanced at Yixian, and then they turned around and fled. Even the hall master had been instantly annihilated. How could they dare to continue fighting Yixian? Yixian didn't chase after those experts of the temporal temple. He was in an extremely bad state right now, and the important matter at hand was to recuperate. Yixian entered Xiaota, and he'd basically recovered an hour later. After he left Xiaota, Yixian sensed the green profound sword, and it didn't take long for him to frown. Because the sword was quite far away from him. Where does that fellow from the Xiao clan intend to take it? Yixian frowned, and he chased after it a short moment later. 3 days later, Yixian, who was riding his sword in space, suddenly stopped. Tens of thousands of meters in front of him stood a majestic city in space. Yixian walked in, and he saw 3 big words above the city gate, Millennium City. After entering the city, Yixian was shocked. The city was very prosperous, and the streets were dozens of meters wide. Tall buildings stood on both sides of the street, and it was densely packed, giving off a slightly oppressive feeling. There were all kinds of living beings walking on the streets. Their auras were powerful, and most of them were life matrix cultivators. Yixian was somewhat speechless. Damn it! These life matrices were all over the place. At that moment, a carriage suddenly drove over from the end of the street. It wasn't 1 horse, but 3. The horses were abnormally tall, and they were several times taller than ordinary horses. They were covered in black scales, and their hooves emitted blood-red flames. Everywhere they passed, they left a trail of fire. As the saying went, there were sparks and lightning along the way, and it was extremely dazzling. A woman sat in the carriage. She wore silver battle armor, and her long silver hair was tied into a ponytail. She held a blood-red whip in her hand, and when she waved it, thunder flashed. At that moment, someone on the street exclaimed, "It's Princess Dao Ling!" Following this exclamation, all the experts on both sides of the street stopped and bowed. Yixian looked at the experts around him, and he was somewhat shocked. What kind of princess was this woman? Could she be a princess of the divine Dao nation? Just as Yixian was thinking, Princess Dao Ling's carriage suddenly stopped near Yixian, and she looked down at Yixian. Why don't you bow? Yixian was slightly stunned, and then he said, I'm new here, and I don't know the rules of this city. Please don't take offense. Dao Ling looked at Yixian, and after a moment, she suddenly said, disrespecting the royal family and blaspheming the dignity of the royal family, execute him on the spot. With that, 2 mysterious experts suddenly appeared behind Yixian, and 2 cold lights slashed at the back of Yixian's neck. Yixian narrowed his eyes, and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. He opened his palm, and a sword light suddenly flew out. The heads of the 2 mysterious experts flew into the air. All the experts present were shocked. This fellow dared to attack the royal family? Dao Ling sized up Yixian. You're a swordsman. Yixian suddenly charged forward and slashed down with his sword. Dao Ling narrowed her eyes, and the blood whip in her hand suddenly swung down. Boom! A wave of sword light and blood light suddenly exploded, and Dao Ling was directly blasted thousands of meters away. Seeing this, the experts on both sides of the street changed their expressions, and they all turned and ran. Who was this Dao Ling? She was the favorite princess of the current divine Dao nation's king. Moreover, Dao Ling was the saintess of Spiritual Mountain. How noble was her identity! And now, someone was actually her opponent? In the distance, Dao Ling glanced at Yixian. Do you know what you're doing? Yi Xian was about to speak when a group of cavalrymen suddenly charged out from the distant street. There were more than 100 of them, and all of them wore thick pitch-black armor and emitted a powerful murderous aura. The leader of the cavalrymen hurriedly came before Dao Ling and knelt on one knee. "This subordinate deserves to die for protecting your majesty late. Please forgive me, princess." Dao Ling said plainly, "Commander Qin, the one who deserves to die is not you, but someone else." Commander Qin stood up and looked at Yi Xian. With a wave of his right hand, the cavalryman charged at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian opened his palm, and a sword light suddenly flew out. In an instant, the heads of all the cavalrymen flew out, and 100 streams of blood shot into the sky like a fountain. It was extremely bloody. Commander Chen's expression changed drastically at the sight of this, and he hurriedly said, "Princess, you leave first." There was a hint of seriousness in Dao Ling's eyes. She stared at Yi Xian and asked, "Do you know what you're doing?" Yi Xian smiled. "Are you trying to say that you have a backer?" Dao Ling looked at Yi Xian. "You're provoking the Dao God Nation and Spirit Mountain. And you'll pay the most painful price for this." Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. "You provoked me first, didn't you?" Dao Ling was expressionless. "You don't respect the imperial family, so you deserve to die." Yi Xian sneered. "What a joke. I was born with an unyielding character. Why would I bow down to a woman like you?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly charged forward and slashed with his sword, drawing a sword to decide life and death. The moment the sword slashed down, a powerful force of sword Dao instantly shattered the space-time in front of him. Dao Ling's expression changed drastically. She waved her right hand, and the blood whip in her hand swept across with a powerful bolt of blood lightning. Heda! Boom! The blood light suddenly shattered, and the blood whip in Dao Ling's hand shattered. At the same time, she was instantly sent flying out of the city. As soon as she stopped, a flying sword suddenly slashed at her. Dao Ling's pupils suddenly shrank. At this moment, she smelled the scent of death. But at this critical moment, a shadow suddenly appeared above her head. The next moment, Yi Xian's flying sword stopped. Seeing this scene, the cavalry commander nearby was so frightened that he collapsed to the ground. If Dao Ling died here, then they would be in big trouble. In the distance, Yi Xian looked at the shadow above Dao Ling's head. The shadow was very blurry, and its true appearance could not be seen clearly. However, it was not the real body, but a wisp of shadow. At this moment, Dao Ling bowed slightly. "Master!" "A powerhouse of Spirit Mountain." The shadow looked at Yi Xian. "You have such a high level of sword Dao cultivation at such a young age. Who are you?" Yi Xian shook his head. "An outsider who has just arrived." The shadow frowned slightly. "Just arrived?" Yi Xian pointed at Dao Ling not far away. "I just arrived and don't know the rules here. Your disciples saw that I did not bow to her and wanted to kill me." "Do you think this?" the shadow suddenly said. "You did not bow to her, and she wanted to kill you. What's wrong with that?" Yi Xian was struck dumb. Then he smiled and said, "Why should I bow to her?" The shadow looked straight at Yi Xian. "Don't you know that she is the princess of the divine Dao nation and the holy lady of Spirit Mountain?" Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Just because of that I should bow to her?" The shadow looked at Yi Xian for a moment and said, "Why don't you bow to her?" A sinister look flashed in Yi Xian's eyes. "The princess of the divine Dao nation? The holy lady of Spirit Mountain? My father is invincible, my brother is invincible, and my sister is invincible. Am I proud? F*CKU. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and Xiao Ta appeared in his hand. In the next moment he suddenly threw him. Boom! The shadow was directly smashed into nothingness by Xiao Ta. At the same time, Dao Ling's physical body was directly shattered by the powerful shockwave, leaving only her soul. P.S. I was too busy returning to my hometown. I'm afraid of losing my roots. Don't mind if I lose my roots. Forgive me. Chapter 1913. Seeing this scene, the expressions of many experts in the dark changed. Who is this guy? How dare he not give face to the divine Dao nation and spiritual mountain? Does he want to die? Dao Ling was also a little dumbfounded at this moment. This guy actually erased his master's virtual image? Most importantly, this guy didn't give face to the divine Dao nation and spiritual mountain. This was the first time she encountered someone who didn't give her face. Dao Ling stared at Yi Xian with a gaze that was like a sword, as if it wanted to pierce through Yi Xian. Do you know what you're doing? Yi Xian didn't waste any words. He suddenly appeared in front of Dao Ling and slashed with his sword. A sword light flashed, and Dao Ling's soul was directly erased. Completely erased. She didn't even have a chance to reincarnate. The experts in the dark gasped when they saw this scene. He really killed her. And he did it so ruthlessly, directly erasing her without even giving her a chance to reincarnate. This was equivalent to slapping the divine Dao nation and spiritual mountain in the face. Who is this young man? On the other side, Commander Chen's face was extremely pale, and his entire body was trembling. Princess Dao Ling was killed just like that? After killing Dao Ling, Yi Xian turned and left. At this moment, Xiaota suddenly said, "Young master, why can't you endure it? Now that you've killed her, endless trouble will come again." Yi Xian said plainly, "I'm not a tortoise. Why should I endure it?" Xiaota sighed softly, "Then you'll have two super enemies, the divine Dao nation and spiritual mountain." Yi Xian smiled. "What can I do? You saw it too. I, Yi Xian, didn't bully anyone. She bullied me first." Xiaota was silent. Yi Xian continued, "Yes, if I had bowed and saluted, there might not have been all this trouble. But Xiaota, why should we bow to her? Just because she's the divine Dao nation's princess? The saintess of Mount Lingshan? I don't care so much. I only know that if people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll definitely offend them." Xiaota said, "I know what you mean, and I also know that you have a backbone. How do you plan to deal with the spiritual mountain and the divine Dao nation next?" Yi Xian shrugged. "If we can win, we fight. If we can't, we run. What else can we do?" Xiaota said, "Then why didn't you run?" Yi Xian's expression changed slightly. "Someone's here." Xiaota asked, "Can't you feel it?" The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. "Feel my ass." As he spoke, he rode his sword and disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Not long after Yi Xian disappeared, a beautiful woman suddenly appeared on the scene. The beautiful woman glanced downwards with a gloomy expression. She was Dao Ling's master, the Grand Elder of Spirited Mountain, Lan Ling. After a short moment, Lan Ling turned around and left. "Pass down my order. Find this person at all costs." The Divine Dao Nation. The Divine Dao Nation was located in the Divine Dao Star region. In the past, the Divine Dao Star region was extremely chaotic, and there were hundreds of thousands of forces of various sizes. But in the end, a Divine Emperor appeared in the Divine Dao Star region, and he unified the entire Divine Dao Star region in a short 100 years. He established an unprecedented super force, the Divine Dao Nation. A woman walked slowly in a hall in the Divine Dao Nation's imperial palace. She held a thick ancient book in her hand. The woman read very seriously, and the corners of her mouth curled up from time to time into a charming smile. The woman wore a wide white dress, and there was a soaring purple phoenix at the end of the dress. The phoenix's eyes were sharp as it looked down upon the world. The woman was the current king of the Divine Dao Nation, Shen Dao Ling. She was known as the most powerful woman in the universe. Right at this moment, an old man walked to the entrance of the hall. When he saw Shen Dao Ling reading, the old man's right foot that was about to step into the hall stopped in midair. He hesitated for a moment before walking in the end. At this moment, Shen Dao Ling put down the book in her hand and turned to look at the old man. She smiled. "What happened?" The old man bowed slightly. "Your Majesty, Princess Ling is dead." Shen Dao Ling. Shen Dao Ling walked slowly to the entrance of the hall with a calm expression. "Who killed her?" The old man said, "A youth of unknown origin." Shen Dao Ling smiled. "Unknown origin?" The old man nodded. "Unknown origin. We only know that the other party is a swordsman. Moreover, The other party is only at the seamless realm. Shen Dao Ling blinked, and seamless realm cultivator killed Ling, who has already reached the life body realm? The old man nodded. Shen Dao Ling smiled. Interesting. The old man bowed slightly. Your Majesty, I have already sent the Imperial Spirit Divine Guards to capture this person. Do you want him dead or alive? Shinto Ling chuckled and said, Lord Musa, a young man at the Seamless Realm was able to kill someone at the Life Physique Realm. Moreover, the other party was someone who knew Linger's identity, yet he still dared to kill her. Do you think he's an ordinary person? Musa's expression was calm. No matter where he came from, since he dared to kill Princess Ling, he is looking down on our divine Dao nation. He should have his entire family executed. Shen Dao Ling smiled. Spiritual Mountain is already searching for this person? Musa nodded. Shen Dao Ling said, then wait for now and watch Spiritual Mountain's performance first. Musa glanced at Shen Dao Ling and nodded. I understand. After saying that, he paused and said, Your Majesty, Dao Mountain's Shao clan leader requests an audience, saying that he has a divine item to offer to Your Majesty. Shen Dao Ling frowned slightly. Dao Mountain? Musa nodded. A very remote starfield. Because there is no value there, it is not within our divine Dao nation's territory. Shen Dao Ling asked, He said he has a divine item to give me? Musa nodded. Also, he wants to give it to Your Majesty in person. Shen Dao Ling smiled. Interesting, let him see me. Musa nodded and then he left. It didn't take long for Xiao Tian and Lin Xiao to arrive before the hall. They were just about to raise their heads to look at the divine Dao plume when an invisible pressure enveloped them, causing their expressions to change drastically, and they hurriedly lowered their heads. At the same time, they were astounded to the extreme. They were Life's Soul Realm cultivators. Yet, this woman could suppress them with just an aura. How terrifying was that? Shen Dao Ling sat down at the side and smiled. You want to give me a divine item? Xiao Tian hurriedly said, Yes. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and the green profound sword floated over to Shen Dao Ling. The smile on Shen Dao Ling's face instantly vanished when she laid eyes on the sword. It was replaced by a solemn expression. Meanwhile, Xiao Tian hurriedly said, Your Majesty, we obtained this by chance. The knowledge of time and space contained within this sword far exceeds our understanding. So, we've specially offered this sword to Your Majesty. Shen Dao Ling held the sword and looked at it for a short while before she gazed at Xiao Tian. Where did you obtain this sword? Xiao Tian hesitated for a moment and was about to speak when Shen Dao Ling said, I'll only give you one chance to speak. Think it through. Xiao Tian was shocked and did not dare to play any more tricks. He immediately said, The two of us obtained it from a young man. Shen Dao Ling frowned slightly. A young man? Xiao Tian hurriedly nodded. Yes. Shen Dao Ling said, Tell me about that young man. Xiao Tian didn't understand, but he didn't dare refuse, so he immediately told her about Yi Xian. At the side, Musa furrowed his brows. Shen Dao Ling gazed at Musa, and the latter nodded. It should be that young man. Shen Dao Ling chuckled. Interesting. As she spoke, she glanced at Xiao Tian and Lin Xiao. I really like this sword. What reward do the two of you want? Both of them were overjoyed when they heard this, and Xiao Tian hurriedly said, It's good that you like it, Your Majesty. As for the reward, Your Majesty, feel free to do as you please. Shen Dao Ling gazed at Musa. Take them away and entertain them well. Musa glanced at Shen Dao Ling and nodded slightly. Understood. As he spoke, he gazed at Xiao Tian and Lin Xiao. Come with me. Xiao Tian and Lin Xiao hurriedly bowed respectfully to Shen Dao Ling, and then they turned around and left with Musa. Within the hall, Shen Dao Ling gazed at the green profound sword in her hand and clearly fell silent. The green profound sword. In next to no time, Musa appeared within the hall, and she spoke in a low voice. Your Majesty, this sword? Shen Dao Ling handed the green profound sword to Musa. Take a look at it. Musa glanced at the green profound sword before him, and his expression became solemn. This sword. Shen Dao Ling said, Summon the palace master of the Shengong Palace, Mu Qiao. Musa immediately turned around and left. A few moments later, Musa brought a white-haired old man into the hall. This person was the palace master of the Shengong Palace, Mu Qiao, and he was responsible for the forging of the weapons of the entire Divine Dao nation. Mu Qiao bowed respectfully to Shen Dao Ling. "Your Majesty." Shen Dao Ling pointed with a finger, and the green profound sword landed before Mu Qiao. "Take a look at this sword." Mu Qiao picked up the green profound sword and sized it up. Moments later, his expression became solemn. "This sword? May I ask your Majesty, where did you get this sword from?" Shen Dao Ling asked. "Can you forge this sword?" Mu Qiao glanced at the green profound sword and hesitated for a moment before he said, "This? Compared to the person who forged this sword, I might still be a little lacking." "A little?" Shen Dao Ling said calmly. "Then you can't." Mu Qiao hurriedly said, "If your Majesty is willing to let me study this sword for half a year, I'll definitely be able to forge a divine item that surpasses this sword." Shen Dao Ling shook her head. "You can't." Mu Qiao was quite confused. "Why not?" Shen Dao Ling looked at the green profound sword in his hand and said softly, "The Tao of space and time contained within this sword is unfamiliar to even me." Mu Qiao hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, let me study this sword for a month. In a month, I'll definitely be able to forge a sword that surpasses this sword." Shen Dao Ling suddenly said, "If you can't, you can resign and go home to retire, is that all right?" Mu Qiao's expression froze, and he bowed slightly moments later. "Your Majesty, the old man still has matters to attend to, so I'll be taking my leave." After saying that, he turned around and left. Shen Dao Ling shook her head and looked at Musa. "Investigate this person's background." Musa nodded before turning around and leaving. Within the palace, Shen Dao Ling looked at the green profound sword in his hand, and after a short while, she grinned. "I know you have a spirit, so I won't ask anything else. I just want to ask a question. What grade of sword do you belong to?" Soul fell silent for a moment before saying, "There's no grade. I'm invincible below 3 swords. Chapter 1914. Under 3 strikes? The divine Dao Ling smiled. "Which 3 strikes?" Soul replied, "Big brother young master's father and young master's younger sister." The divine Dao Ling's eyes narrowed slightly. "Young master?" Soul replied, "Yes." The divine Dao Ling suddenly turned around. "Guards." Meanwhile, a man in black armor who carried a huge saber on his back walked in. The divine Dao Ling said, "Send my decree. Tell the spirit mountain not to make things difficult for that young man." The armored man bowed slightly, turned around, and left. The divine Dao Ling's expression gradually turned solemn as he gazed at the green profound sword in his grasp. Yi Xian walked slowly through an unknown mountain range. His destination was the divine Dao nation's capital because he sensed that the green profound sword was there. At this moment, the space in front of him suddenly trembled. Yi Xian's expression was calm. The reason he hadn't flown on his sword was because he wanted to avoid some trouble. He hadn't expected that they would be able to find him just by walking. Since it was like that, then it was over. At this moment, a woman suddenly walked out from the crack in space. It was the Spirit Mountain's Grand Elder, Lan Ling. Lan Ling gazed at Yi Xian. "Since you dared to disregard my Spirit Mountain and the Divine Dao Nation, then I presume your background isn't simple. However, I'm very curious about the power behind you." Yi Xian smiled. "There's no enmity between me and the Spirit Mountain, and I have no intention of offending it. It was your holy maiden who wanted to kill me first. You." Lan Ling shook her head. "I didn't come here to listen to you." When she spoke up to this point, she walked slowly towards Yi Xian. "The strong have no need to listen to the weak. Understand?" Yi Xian suddenly tossed. Bang! A ray of golden light suddenly flashed across the battlefield. Lan Ling's expression instantly changed drastically. She opened her right hand, and a golden shield suddenly appeared in front of her. Bang! The golden round shield shattered, and Lan Ling's physical body was crushed along with it. Lan Ling, who only had her soul left, was stunned. At this moment, a sword suddenly pressed against Lan Ling's forehead. Lan Ling's expression changed drastically. If you dare touch me, the spiritual mountain will slaughter your entire sect. Yi Xian blinked. If you want to slaughter me, I'm a little afraid, but if you want to slaughter my entire family, at this point he said seriously, don't stand on ceremony. Quickly go slaughter them, especially my father. You're welcome to go find him. Don't hold back, use all your strength to beat him up. Lan Ling glared at Yi Xian. I underestimated you. Now we can talk. Yi Xian was so angry that he laughed. I want to reason with you, but you want to talk to me with your fists. I want to talk to you with my fists, but you want to reason with me. I'm not your father. Why should I spoil you? As he spoke, he suddenly punched out. Boom. Lan Ling was blasted into nothingness by the punch. Completely erased. Right at this moment, an extremely terrifying aura suddenly swept down from the distant horizon. In next to no time, the horizon split open, and a middle-aged man walked out from within. Mount Master of the Spiritual Mountain, Lin. Along with Lin's appearance, dozens of spiritual mountain powerhouses appeared. Among them, there were a total of 12 life soul realm powerhouses. They were surrounded. Yi Xian's expression was calm. Xiaota suddenly said, Young Lord, it was a moment of pleasure to kill. How are you going to clean up now? Yi Xian said calmly, What can I do? If it were you, Xiaota, would you take it lying down? Xiaota said, Young Lord, I've never seen you so unyielding towards Master. Yi Xian said, That's my father. Isn't it only right and proper for me to give in to him? If he wasn't my father, I would've. Xiaota said calmly, What do you mean by that? Young Lord, you sound like you can beat Master. Yi Xian shook his head. Xiaota, how did father tolerate you until now? Xiaota, at this moment, Lin suddenly said, You killed our holy maiden and grand elder of Spiritual Mountain. How dare you? Yi Xian was about to speak, but Lin suddenly said, Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, he flipped his palm. In an instant, the space around Yi Xian suddenly transformed into a cage, and the experts from the Spiritual Mountain were about to attack. However, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared here. The middle-aged man wore black armor and carried a large saber on his back. Seeing him, Lin frowned. Lord Enzua? Enzua said, His Majesty has decreed that all powerhouses of Spiritual Mountain return immediately. Return immediately. Hearing this, Lin frowned. Return immediately? Lord Enzua, what does His Majesty mean? Enzua looked at Lin. Return. Lin pointed at Yi Xian angrily. Lord Enzua, this person killed Princess Ling. Enzua said, Return immediately. Lin's expression was somewhat ugly. Enzua suddenly pulled out the large saber on his back and slashed forward. Lin's expression changed drastically and he blocked with his arm. Boom. Lin instantly retreated tens of thousands of feet, and space-time was destroyed. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. This guy is a bit fierce. That saber just now actually shook the 9th layer of space-time. In the distance, Lin's expression was extremely ugly. Of course, it was mostly fear. Enzua looked coldly at Lin. Return to the mountain. This is the last warning. Lin glanced at Yi Xian beside him, then turned around and left. He was not afraid of Enzua, but behind Enzua was the woman who represented Divine Dao Nation. After Lin and the powerhouses of Spiritual Mountain left, Enzua turned to look at Yi Xian. His Majesty requests an audience. Yi Xian asked, The ruler of Divine Dao Nation? Enzua nodded. Yi Xian hesitated, then said, Can I not go? Enzua suddenly pulled out the large saber on his back. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Go. Let's go now. Enzua nodded. Please. Yi Xian felt somewhat helpless. On the way, Yi Xian looked at Enzua. Why is His Majesty looking for me? Enzua shook her head. I don't know. Yi Xian asked again, Is His Majesty angry that I killed your Princess Ling? Enzua shook her head again. I don't know. Yi Xian thought about it and asked again, Your Majesty? Enzua looked at Yi Xian. Young master, I don't know anything. Even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you. Can you be quiet? Yi Xian. After Yi Xian and Enzhua left, Mo Lian watched Yi Xian and Enzhua disappear into the distance and said, "This person probably has a backer in Divine Dao Nation. Someone is protecting him." A spiritual mountain powerhouse said, "Then what should we do? Our first elder and saintess going to die in vain?" After a moment of silence, Mo Lian said, "Didn't the divine marquis's grandson, Wen Renyu, like the saintess? Now that the saintess has been killed, he can't sit back and do nothing. Inform Wen Renyu immediately. Also, use all the connections of spiritual mountain in Divine Dao Nation to kill this person." The spiritual mountain elder nodded. "Understood." Mo Lian looked at the horizon in the distance and then turned to leave. 1 hour later, Yi Xian and Enzhua arrived at the Divine Dao Nation's imperial capital. When they arrived at the gates of the Divine Dao Nation's imperial capital, Yi Xian was somewhat surprised. This Divine Dao Nation's imperial capital was not big, or rather, it was a little small. At this moment, Enzhua said, "Young master, remember, no fighting is allowed in the city." Yi Xian asked, "What if someone provokes me?" Enzhua glanced at Yi Xian. "In any case, no fighting." Yi Xian continued to ask, "What if someone hits me first?" Enzhua looked at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, who would hit you for no reason?" Yi Xian asked, "What if?" Enzhua said, "Young Master Yi, no one would take the initiative to hit you. You." At this moment, a young man suddenly walked over from the street in the distance. This young man was wearing an embroidered robe and had a sword at his waist. He held a folding fan in his hand. With one look, one could tell that he was a distinguished young master. Seeing this young man, Enzhua hesitated for a moment and then bowed slightly. "Greetings, young Marquis." Young Marquis Wen Renyu. Wen Renyu ignored Enzhua and looked at Yi Xian. "Why didn't you kneel and greet this Marquis?" Yi Xian pulled on Enzhua's sleeve. "Didn't you say that no one would come looking for trouble with me?" Enzhua. At this moment, Wen Renyu smiled and said, "Not greeting this Marquis is looking down on etiquette, the Divine Marquis residence, and the Divine Dao Nation." With that, he looked at Enzhua. "Lord Enzhua, Enlu, how should we deal with this person?" Enzhua said in a low voice. "Young Marquis, His Majesty has summoned him." Wen Renyu smiled. "Did I stop him from seeing His Majesty? What I'm saying is that this person didn't greet me. He has violated the laws of the Divine Dao Nation." Enzhua frowned when he heard this. How could he not discern that Wen Renyu had come to cause trouble on purpose? Enzhua hesitated for a moment and then looked at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi," Yi Xian blinked. "You wouldn't want me to greet him, right?" Enzhua said, "Just greet him." Wen Renyu looked at Yi Xian and lightly tapped the folding fan in his hand. He smiled but didn't say anything. Yi Xian smiled. "He said that the people of the Divine Dao Nation must greet him, but I don't seem to be from the Divine Dao Nation." Wen Renyu suddenly smiled. "But you're standing on the territory of my Divine Dao Nation. Since you're standing on the territory of my Divine Dao Nation, then you should obey the laws of my Divine Dao Nation." Yi Xian gazed at Wen Renyu and smiled. "Young master, there's no enmity between us, right?" Wen Renyu walked over to Yi Xian and grinned. "Don't we have one now?" Yi Xian smiled. "The last person who asked me to greet her seemed to be called a Divine Dao Spirit. Right, she's completely vanished from this world now." Wen Renyu's expression instantly turned cold. He took 2 more steps forward and smiled. "Come, hit me." Provocation. Yi Xian suddenly withdrew Xiao Ta and smashed it down. Bang. Wen Renyu wasn't even able to react before he was smashed into pieces by Xiao Ta. Everyone here was stunned when they witnessed this scene. Even Enzhua hadn't expected that Yi Xian would suddenly attack, and he hadn't even been able to stop Yi Xian in time. Yi Xian opened his palm, and Xiao Ta returned to his grasp. He glanced at the spatial black hole that Xiao Ta had created. "Hit you? I'll fucking kill you." As he spoke, he gazed at Enzhua and spoke furiously. "I hate second-generation disciples that rely on their fathers and ancestors the most. How embarrassing! If everyone was like me, Yi Xian." Meanwhile, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, that's enough. I'm very embarrassed. You're the strongest second-generation disciple in the world, so what's there to say?" Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. It's the new year tomorrow, so I don't have time to write. What should I do? I haven't stopped writing for an entire year, so I can apply for leave. Brothers. Chapter 1915. Following Wenren Yu's death, the entire street became quiet. Wenren Yu. That was the divine Marquis young duke. What kind of existence was the divine Marquis Manor? The divine Marquis Manor's ancestor was one of the founding fathers who followed the divine emperor to conquer the world. In order to reward the divine Marquis Manor's ancestor, Wenren Tian, the divine emperor personally decreed that as long as the descendants of the Wenren clan did not rebel, they would be exempted from death. But now, someone actually killed the Wenren clan's young duke. Moreover, this young duke was the Wenren clan's only son. Things were getting out of hand. Next to Yixian, Enzua's expression was also extremely ugly. Damn it! Why did this guy dare to kill anyone? Was he crazy? At this time, Yixian suddenly said, Lord Enzua, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and bring me to your emperor. Enzua said solemnly, Young Master Yi, things are getting out of hand. Yixian said, That's why we have to hurry up and see your emperor. Right now, only your emperor can protect me, right? Enzua was speechless. You still know who can protect you. Without further thought, Enzua brought Yixian to the palace. He also knew that only his emperor could solve this problem. He was a little afraid of Yixian now. This guy was also a tiger. He dared to kill without a word, regardless of who the other party was. Tiger. The two of them had only taken a few steps when a hunchbacked old man suddenly appeared in front of them. Behind this hunchbacked old man stood 10 experts in dark armor. The Wenren clan. Seeing this hunchbacked old man, Enzua hesitated, then bowed slightly, Lord Wuxian. Wuxian, the Wenren clan's housekeeper. However, this was not an ordinary housekeeper. He was once a commander of the imperial army. After leaving the palace, he became a housekeeper at the divine Marquis Manor. Wuxian glanced at Enzua, then at Yixian. Without any nonsense, he charged forward and threw a punch at Yixian. This punch seemed to contain the stampede of a magnificent army, and a monstrous momentum instantly enveloped Yixian. Yixian did not retreat. Instead, he took a step forward, drew his sword, and slashed. Boom! A sword light shattered, and Yixian instantly retreated several thousand feet away. Wuxian suddenly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, and he was like a ferocious tiger that had left its cage as he punched straight at Yixian. This punch caused the surrounding space to distort and transform into a space-time vortex. In the distance, Yixian narrowed his eyes and took a step forward. In an instant, a wave of sword light engulfed him and Wuxian. Boom! The ground shook violently, and the sword light shattered. Yixian retreated another 100 feet. After Wuxian stopped, he was about to attack again. In the distance, Yixian opened his palm, and Xiaota appeared in his hand. Just as he was about to activate Xiaota again, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yixian. Seeing this person, Enzua heaved a sigh of relief. Musa. This person was the current divine minister, Musa. In the Shinto nation, he had great prestige and power. Seeing Musa, Wuxian did not attack again. Instead, he bowed slightly. Lord Divine Minister. Musa turned to look at Yixian, then at Wuxian. His Majesty has summoned him. Anything can wait until His Majesty has met him. Wuxian said solemnly, Lord Divine Minister, young Master Yu is dead. Musa frowned. I told you. His Majesty has summoned him. Wuxian's face turned ugly. Right at this moment, a cough suddenly sounded from afar. Everyone looked over and saw a beautiful woman walking over slowly from afar. Musa's face darkened when he saw this beautiful woman. Wuxian and the rest quickly went over and knelt down. Greetings, mistress. Situ Jing of the Divine Marquis Mansion was the current ruler of the Divine Marquis Mansion. Situ Jing walked slowly to Musa. Musa hesitated for a while, then bowed slightly. Old man. Situ Jing chuckled. I know that the Divine Marquis Mansion is not the same as before. In terms of power, we are indeed no match for you, Lord Divine Minister. However, The Divine Marquis Mansion is not a place that can be easily bullied. Then she lightly tapped the walking stick in her right hand. Boom! The ground cracked, and in the next moment, hundreds of shadows suddenly rushed out from all directions. Divine Marquis Guards. Musa's face darkened. These Divine Marquis Guards were the bodyguards of the Divine Marquis Mansion. Even the weakest among them was at the Divine Physique Echelon. At this moment, a group of mysterious experts suddenly appeared beside Musa. There were only 16 of them, but they were all at the Divine Soul Echelon. And these were Musa's own bodyguards. The atmosphere in the surroundings instantly became tense. Sidu Jing looked at Musa. Lord Divine Minister, the Divine Marquis Mansion has no enmity with you, and we have never thought of becoming enemies with you. Today, the Divine Marquis Mansion only wants to seek justice. Musa shook his head. Old man, he is the person that His Majesty wants to see. Situ Jing glanced at Yi Xian. Why does His Majesty want to see him? Musa shook his head. I don't know. Situ Jing stared at Musa. He killed you, heir. Musa said in a low voice. Old man, let His Majesty meet him first. How about that? Situ Jing was silent. Around them, the experts from the Divine Marquis Mansion stared at Yi Xian. As soon as Situ Jing gave the order, they would swarm him. At this moment, Situ Jing suddenly said, since His Majesty wants to see him, then let His Majesty meet him first. Hearing this, Musa relaxed a little. He nodded and turned to Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, please. Then he turned and left. Yi Xian sheathed his sword and followed him. At this moment, Situ Jing suddenly said, Young man. Yi Xian turned to look at Situ Jing. Situ Jing stared at Yi Xian. No matter how powerful you are, the Divine Marquis Mansion must take your head. Yi Xian walked to Situ Jing. At this moment, Musa frowned. Young Master Yi, don't do anything rash. Yi Xian suddenly laughed. Lord Musa, didn't you see that she was the one who threatened me first? Musa's expression was cold. Young Master Yi, if you do anything rash, no one can protect you. Yi Xian laughed. Rash? What a joke. The moment I entered this city, the Divine Marquis Mansion came to bully me. But only the Divine Marquis Mansion can bully others, but others can't? Or is it that the law of God country only bullies the weak and fears the strong? Musa stared at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, be careful with your words. Yi Xian smiled. All right. I will be careful. Lord Musa, let's go. Let's go and meet your Majesty. After saying that, he walked into the distance. Musa glanced at Yi Xian and followed. After Yi Xian and Musa disappeared, Situ Jing suddenly said, Pass down my order. Spread the news that this person killed Princess Ling and you. Yu Xian nodded. Understood. As he spoke, his expression became slightly solemn. He knew that old madam wanted to control the public opinion first. But why did he want to control the public opinion? Because this person was not simple. At this moment, Situ Jing asked again, Why did you suddenly find trouble with this person? An expert from the Divine Marquis Constabulary said in a low voice, Old madam, someone informed young master that Princess Ling was killed by that young man. That's why young master came to find this young man. Situ Jing's expression darkened. Spiritual mountain, right? That expert nodded. Situ Jing slowly closed his eyes. His expression was extremely cold. Spiritual mountain, how dare you use the Divine Marquis Mansion? She knew that the Divine Marquis Mansion was being used by the spiritual mountain. That expert said, Old man, I'm afraid that young man's background is not simple. Situ Jing was expressionless. How can someone who dares to kill the princess of God country be simple? However, no matter who he is, the Divine Marquis Mansion will take his head as an offering to you, soul in heaven. Then she turned and left. Soon, the entire Divine Marquis Mansion began to move. The Divine Marquis Mansion's influence in God country was not to be trifled with. Before long, countless officials of God country had already left for the palace, ready to make a statement. At this moment, Yi Xian and Musa arrived at the entrance of the palace. Musa turned to Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, do you know etiquette? Yi Xian smiled. Are you trying to say that I should bow when I see His Majesty? Musa said in a low voice, Young Master Yi, only His Majesty can protect you. Yi Xian suddenly said, My sword is in His Majesty's hands, right? He could already feel the profound green sword. It was in this palace. Musa nodded. Yi Xian smiled and walked into the palace. There was only one woman in the palace. It was the divine Dao Ling. Seeing Yi Xian enter, the divine Dao Ling put down a memorial in her hand and smiled as she pointed at the memorials in front of her. There are a total of 1280 memorials, and all of them request for your immediate death. As she spoke, she slowly walked in front of Yi Xian and looked straight at Yi Xian. Little fella, I know that you are not simple, but you are too ruthless. First, you killed a princess of God country, then you killed the little marquis of the divine marquis mansion. Furthermore, you did not leave any leeway. Even if I wanted to protect you, I would not be able to. Yi Xian said with a smile, I have never provoked any of your people. The divine Dao Ling blinked. Is that important? It is not. You should understand that reason is built on your fist. If you do not have the strength, you will only be humiliating yourself by trying to reason with me. Yi Xian smiled. I understand. The divine Dao Ling smiled. Then tell me, how will you live? Yi Xian said with a smile, You should know better than me, don't you? The divine Dao Ling opened her palm and the profound green sword appeared in her hand. She looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Who is the person who forged this sword? Yi Xian answered honestly, My sister. Sister? The divine Dao Ling's lips curled up. She is the person behind you, and the reason why you are so unyielding, right? Yi Xian looked at the divine Dao Ling. What do you want? The divine Dao Ling smiled. Young Master Yi, whether you can live or not depends on how strong the person who forged this sword is. As she spoke, she exerted force in her right hand and a mysterious force suddenly surged into the profound green sword. Boom! The profound green sword trembled. At the same time, the space before her warped. A few moments later, the divine Dao Ling looked up. A few breaths later, the corners of her mouth curled up. Young Master Yi, I can sense the person who forged this sword. As soon as she finished speaking, her body suddenly became illusory. In the next moment, her illusory figure passed through countless spaces and arrived at an unknown starry sky. Not far away from her, a woman in a plain dress stood quietly. Not far from her, over 10,000 mysterious experts were kneeling on the ground. Not only were they kneeling, but their bodies were also trembling and their faces were filled with terror. At this moment, the woman turned around and looked at the divine Dao Ling. What's the matter? The divine Dao Ling smiled. I am the ruler of the divine Dao nation. Your brother's life and death are in my hands. The divine Dao nation? The woman raised her brows. She opened her right hand, and the walking sword appeared in her hand. Point me in a direction. P.S. A reader's birthday requested an extra chapter. I couldn't refuse. Chapter 1916. Where was the nation of divine Dao? Hearing the woman's words, the faces of the mysterious experts behind her instantly changed. All the experts immediately crawled down and their bodies trembled violently. They were terrified to the extreme. Over 100 kilometers behind them was pitch black, and even the 10th layer of space had been obliterated. That place was originally their home. 15 minutes ago, the woman in a plain dress had asked them the same question, and 15 minutes later, their home was gone. The divine Dao Ling looked at the woman in a plain dress. Where is my home? The woman in a plain dress shook her head. There's no need for you to point. As she spoke, the walk sword in her hand suddenly flew out. The divine Dao Ling's pupils constricted when she saw the woman in a plain dress attack. Even though it was only an illusion, she didn't underestimate her opponent. When she was about to attack, that seemingly slow sword suddenly stabbed into the space between her brows. Bang! The divine Dao Ling's body instantly became illusory. The divine Dao Ling looked at the woman in a plain dress. I underestimated you. As soon as she finished speaking, her pupils constricted. In the nation of divine Dao, within the imperial palace, a sword stabbed into the space between the divine Dao Ling's brows without any warning. The divine Dao Ling's eyes were wide open, and they were filled with disbelief. How is this possible? That was the first thought in her mind. How could she stab into my body from countless galaxies away? That was utterly impossible. Right at this moment, her body and soul were vanishing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The aura of death caused the divine Dao Ling's mind to clear up. The divine Dao Ling hurriedly looked at Yixian. I know Miss Nian. Yixian said, Qing, spare her life. As soon as he finished speaking, the sword between the divine Dao Ling's brows suddenly vanished, and the divine Dao Ling's body went limp and fell to the ground. In the unknown starry sky, the woman in a plain dress opened her palm, and a sword light fell into her palm. It was the walk sword. The woman in a plain dress turned to look at the group of mysterious experts before her. Do you want to live? All of them nodded in unison. The woman in a plain dress opened her left hand, and a portrait appeared in her hand. She opened the portrait. My brother. Everyone was stunned. What did that mean? The woman in a simple dress frowned slightly when she saw no one answer her. In an instant, the expressions of all of them turned grim, and the man in the lead hurriedly said, From this moment onward, Senior's older brother is our older brother. No, he's our master. We'll go and follow master right now. With that, he turned around and left with the mysterious powerhouses behind him. The man in the lead instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the woman in a simple dress didn't attack. Damn it. We were almost annihilated. Where did this deity come from? At this moment, an old man said, Grand Heavenly Venerate, what should we do now? Grand Empyrean pondered for a moment before saying, Go find that youth. The old man frowned. Are we really going to recognize that young man as our master? Grand Empyrean said angrily, What? Is it a loss for us to acknowledge him as our master? The elder hesitated for a moment before saying, We're a god-tier civilization after all. If we acknowledge someone else as our master, the Grand Empyrean stared at the old man. A level 10 civilization? Look carefully. We can't even take a single strike from him. You can't even take one sword. The old man's expression was quite unsightly. The Grand Empyrean slowly closed his eyes. Why didn't she kill us? Is it because she was benevolent? It's because we're willing to submit to her. Understand? The old man nodded. I understand. But how are we going to find that young man? The Grand Empyrean fell silent for a moment before he said, Didn't the image of a woman arrive just now? We can use the space-time mark she left here to find her. She should know where that young man is. As soon as he finished speaking, he led the experts behind him and vanished into the distance. Divine Dao Kingdom. Within a hall, Yixian sat at the side and drank tea slowly. On the other hand, the divine Dao Ling was sitting cross-legged at the side and healing herself. Even though the woman in a simple dress had withdrawn that sword strike, it had heavily injured her soul, so she was extremely weak at this moment. After a long time, the divine Dao Ling recovered slightly, and she gazed at Yixian who sat nearby. Who is she? Yixian replied, My younger sister. The divine Dao Ling fell silent. Yixian looked at the divine Dao Ling. What's your name? The divine Dao Ling replied, Divine Dao Ling. Yixian nodded. Miss Ling, let's talk about reason. I met the princess of your country, the divine Dao spirit. She insisted that I bow to her, but I didn't. Then she attacked me and I killed her. Miss Ling, whose fault do you think it is? The divine Dao Ling glanced at Yixian. The one who attacked first was at fault. Yixian smiled. When I came to Divine Dao Kingdom, the young Marquis of the Divine Marquis Mansion provoked me for no reason, so the divine Dao Ling said softly, Young Master Yi, I understand what you mean. Yixian shook his head. You don't understand. Qing attacked. If Qing didn't make a move, you wouldn't have listened to me at all. Just like what you said before, the so-called reason is built on the foundation of strength. With that, he stood up and walked to the divine Dao Ling. Miss Ling, I really want to kill you, and even destroy your divine Dao Kingdom. Because I've been really angry since the beginning, but I didn't ask Qing to do that. Do you know why? With that, he walked out of the hall. The divine Dao Ling suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, I want to know why. After all, if you didn't speak just now, I would have been dead." Yi Xian smiled. "Because of Sister Nian. I don't have to give face to others, but I have to give face to Sister Nian." With that, he walked out of the hall. Outside the hall, he saw the divine marquis mansion Situ Jing, and behind him stood a group of divine Dao Kingdom officials. Situ Jing gazed at Yi Xian in silence. Meanwhile, an old man suddenly pointed a finger at Yi Xian with fury. "You're the one who killed Princess Ling and the junior marquis." Yi Xian nodded and smiled. "That's me." The old man spoke furiously. "How presumptuous! This is the divine Dao Kingdom. How dare you act so arrogantly here? Capture him." Behind him, several soldiers were about to step forward and capture Yi Xian. However, at this moment, the divine Dao Plume walked out of the hall. Everyone in the surroundings turned pale when they saw the divine Dao Plume, and then they hurriedly knelt down. "Your Majesty!" Situ Jing didn't kneel, and he bowed slightly instead. The divine Dao Ling's face remained emotionless. "What are you doing?" The old man hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, he killed Princess Ling and the junior marquis of the divine marquis estate. His crimes are monstrous. I hope your Majesty can execute him immediately and execute his entire family." Execute his entire family. The corners of Situ Jing's mouth twitched. At this moment, he thought of that woman in a plain dress. The old man intended to say something, but the divine Dao Ling suddenly said, "Shut up." The old man was stunned when he heard this. The other officials of the divine Dao Kingdom were astounded as well, and Situ Jing, who led the group, had a gloomy expression on his face. Meanwhile, the divine Dao Ling opened his palm, and then a dark golden command token slowly floated over to Yi Xian. The expressions of all the officials here changed drastically when they saw this golden command token. The Divine Emperor token. It was a supreme command token because it was left behind by the Divine Emperor all those years ago. Seeing this command token was equivalent to seeing the Divine Emperor, and even the current ruler of the kingdom had to bow before it. Moreover, the command token could mobilize any army within the Divine Dao Kingdom. It could be said that the authority of this command token was merely inferior to the Divine Dao Ling. It was exactly because of the special nature of the Divine Emperor token that it had never left the Divine Dao race since the Divine Dao Kingdom was founded, and it had always been in the possession of the successive rulers of the Divine Dao Kingdom. Moreover, from a certain perspective, the Divine Emperor token could be considered as a token of trust of the Divine Dao Kingdom's ruler, because the authority of the Divine Emperor token was truly too great. The successive rulers of the Divine Dao Kingdom didn't dare to give it to an outsider. Yet, at this moment, the Divine Dao Ling actually intends to give it to this young man? All the experts of the Divine Dao Kingdom were stunned. On the other hand, the face of Situ Jing, who led the group, instantly turned pale, and her hand was trembling. The Divine Dao Ling gazed at Yi Xian. "Keep it? It'll be able to avoid a lot of unnecessary trouble in the future." Yi Xian glanced at the Divine Emperor token and shook his head. "I don't deserve a reward without doing anything. I don't want it." As soon as he finished speaking, he walked towards the distance. All the officials of the Divine Dao Kingdom almost fainted when they heard Yi Xian. He actually doesn't want it? He actually doesn't want the Divine Emperor token? Some of the officials of the Divine Dao Kingdom couldn't restrain themselves from cursing. He actually refused the Divine Emperor token. Meanwhile, the Divine Dao Ling suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and she gazed at Yi Xian. "This token can save you a lot of trouble. I presume that you don't want to cause unnecessary trouble just like what happened before, right?" Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he put the Divine Emperor token away, turned around, and left. He'd only taken a few steps when he suddenly stopped, and then he turned around to look at the Divine Dao Ling. "Where's the Women's Academy?" The Divine Dao Ling said, "Divine Image Musa, take young Master Yi to the Women's Academy." Musa walked over to Yi Xian and bowed slightly. "Young Master Yi, come with me." As soon as he finished speaking, he gestured for Qin Shi to follow him. Yi Xian glanced at Musa and said, "Please lead the way." Musa hurriedly replied, I wouldn't dare. As soon as he finished speaking, he led Yi Xian along and vanished into the horizon. The officials of the divine Dao kingdom at the entrance to the imperial palace were stunned. Meanwhile, the divine Dao Ling suddenly said, besides old man Situ and the others, everyone else is dismissed. The officials of the divine Dao kingdom hurriedly bowed respectfully and left. They weren't idiots, so they naturally noticed that something was off. After all, that young man possessed the divine emperor token. Would His Majesty give it away just like that? Of course not. After they left, Situ Jing gazed at the divine Dao Ling. Your Majesty, the revenge of my divine marquis estate. The divine Dao Ling stared at Situ Jing. Don't offend him. Situ Jing spoke in a low voice. Your Majesty, is dead. The divine Dao Ling spoke softly. If you insist on taking revenge, then Wenren Yu won't be the only one to die. Your entire divine marquis estate will die as well. Situ Jing's face froze when she heard this, and then she slowly knelt down and remained silent. The divine Dao Ling walked over to Situ Jing and said, even if the divine marquis is alive, he has to endure it. Old man, if you continue to cause trouble for him, then I'll destroy the divine marquis estate. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Situ Jing remained silent, and his expression was extraordinarily calm. Chapter 1917. Musa brought Yi Xian to the Women's Academy. The Women's Academy wasn't in the imperial capital but in Yong City. On the way, Musa patiently explained to Yi Xian, Yong City is a small city. It was originally an abandoned ancient city. Because it's located in a remote area and it's surrounded by desert, no one lives in this city. His Majesty wanted Miss Moon Yen to establish an academy in the imperial capital, but she refused. We don't know why she chose such a remote place. Yi Xian smiled. Sister Nian. He was actually looking forward to meeting Sister Nian because he hadn't seen her for a long time. Musa looked at Yi Xian and said, Young Master Yi, do you know what token His Majesty gave you? Yi Xian opened his palm and the divine emperor token appeared in his hand. Is it very precious? Musa said, Young Master Yi, this is the divine emperor token. It's very precious. You can use it to mobilize any army in Shinto. Yi Xian looked at Musa. Any army? Musa nodded. Any army. Yi Xian said with a smile. So, this divine emperor token is very precious. Musa looked at Yi Xian and said, Very, very precious. Yi Xian smiled and didn't say anything. Half an hour later, Musa and Yi Xian arrived at Yong City. Musa was slightly shocked when he arrived at Harmony City, because he noticed that Harmony City was bustling with people and endless streams of horses and carriages. It was extremely bustling and flourishing. Not only that, he also sensed a very powerful aura in Yong City. Musa was shocked because Yong City had changed a lot. After entering the city, they went straight to the Women's Academy. The Women's Academy was located on a mountain. When they arrived at the foot of the mountain, a pretty girl suddenly appeared in front of them. The girl looked at Yi Xian and Musa and smiled. You two don't look familiar. Musa said, Miss, this young Master Yi wants to see your dean. The woman looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi? Yi Xian nodded. Tell Sister Nian that I'm here. The woman blinked. You know the dean? Yi Xian nodded. The woman smiled and said, The dean is not here. Yi Xian frowned. Not here. The woman nodded. She left with Missin and the others a few days ago. Yi Xian asked, Where did he go? The woman shook her head. I don't know. Yi Xian said solemnly, Who is in charge of the academy now? The woman said, Instructor Deng. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said, Take me to see her. The woman hesitated for a moment before she said, Should I go notify them? Yi Xian nodded. All right. The woman was just about to turn around and leave when a voice resounded from the mountain, Let him in. The woman was slightly stunned, and then she turned around to look at Yi Xian. Let's go. Yi Xian nodded, and then he turned around to look at Musa. Musa, let's part ways here. Musa nodded. Young Master Yi, take care. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Yi Xian followed the woman to the top of the mountain, and Yi Xian saw a woman in a small courtyard. He knew her, and it was Miss Ding. Yi Xian bowed slightly. Aunt Ding. Miss Ding smiled. I thought that you would only arrive after some time. I never expected that you would arrive so quickly. Yi Xian smiled. Aunt Ding, I never expected that you would be here as well. Miss Ding glanced at Yi Xian. The seamless state? Yi Xian nodded. Miss Ding stood up. Follow me. As soon as she finished speaking, she walked to the side, and Yi Xian hurriedly followed her. On the way, Miss Ding asked, What do you plan to do next? Yi Xian said solemnly, Improve my strength. Miss Ding smiled. The best way to improve my strength is to fight. Yi Xian nodded. Indeed. Miss Ding said, Miss Nian said that if you come, she will bring you to a place. Yi Xian was slightly curious. Where? Miss Ding said, The city of myriad domains. Yi Xian frowned. The city of myriad domains? Miss Ding stopped, and she looked at Yi Xian. Give me your Xiao Ta and Azure sword. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he passed the Xiao Ta and Azure sword to Miss Ding. Miss Ding said, I will temporarily keep them for you. As she spoke, she pointed to a teleportation array not far away. Go in. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he asked, Aunt Ding, is it dangerous inside? Miss Ding nodded. Very dangerous. Yi Xian. Miss Ding smiled. Are you afraid? Yi Xian said with a smile. What are you afraid of? As he spoke, he glanced at Xiao Ta in Miss Ding's hand. Aunt Ding, can this Xiao Ta enter with me? Miss Ding smiled. Give me a reason. Yi Xian said, I have been through life and death with it for so many years, and I have feelings for it. Moreover, I also want to bring it along for the training this time. Miss Ding looked at Yi Xian for a moment, and then she smiled. All right. As she spoke, she passed Xiao Ta to Yi Xian. After receiving Xiao Ta, Yi Xian bowed slightly. Aunt Ding, I will be going now. As he spoke, he entered the teleportation array. The teleportation array was activated, and in an instant, Yi Xian disappeared. After Yi Xian disappeared, Miss Ding was silent for a moment, and then she turned to leave. Divine Dao Nation, inside the palace. Musa walked to the Shinto Dao Ling and bowed slightly. Your Majesty, young Master Yi has gone to the city of myriad domains. The Shinto Dao Ling frowned slightly. City of myriad domains? Musa nodded. The Shinto Dao Ling was silent. Musa hesitated for a moment, and then he asked, What is your Majesty worried about? The Shinto Dao Ling said softly, The city of myriad domains. This means that he will come into contact with the savage land. Musa said solemnly, Your Majesty is worried that young Master Yi will join the savage land? The Shinto Dao Ling nodded. Musa's face was gloomy. Your Majesty, young Master Yi has the Divine Emperor token. If he really joins the savage land, it will be a devastating disaster for our Divine Dao Nation. After a moment of silence, the Shinto Dao Ling said softly, Let's wait and see for now. Musa suddenly bowed slightly. Your Majesty, it is better to be safe than sorry. Your Majesty, please take back the Divine Emperor token immediately. The Shinto Dao Ling glanced at Musa. I just gave it out, and you want to take it back? I am not as thick-skinned as you. Musa said solemnly, But Your Majesty, if that young Master Yi becomes friends with the savage land, then, the Shinto Dao Ling said softly, Don't worry. This young Master Yi is too stubborn. If he goes to the city of myriad domains, he will only cause trouble, big trouble at that. So, let's just wait and see. As she said that, she seemed to have thought of something and frowned slightly. Send an order to the city of myriad domains. In our Divine Dao Nation, no one is to provoke him, no matter who it is. Musa smiled bitterly. Forget it. The more we do this, the more likely those little fellows will provoke him. The Shinto Dao Ling nodded. Then let them be. With that, she turned and left. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian opened his eyes. At this moment, he was already in front of an old city. The sky was dark and covered in dark clouds, and it was extremely oppressive. The city before him was very old and slightly shabby, and it emitted a pungent smell of blood. Yi Xian said softly, "This is not a good place." As he spoke, he walked towards the center of the city. At this moment, he suddenly turned his head and saw a man staring at him from the city wall not far away. The man held a dagger in his hand, and the dagger was still stained with blood. Yi Xian ignored the man and continued walking towards the city. At this moment, the man suddenly smiled. "Brother, please wait." Yi Xian looked at the man, and the man grinned. "I am a little short of money recently, and I want to borrow some soul crystals from you. Don't worry, I will definitely return what I borrow." "Robbery?" Yi Xian smiled. "How much do you want?" The man chuckled. "Give me 1 million. Yi Xian opened his palm, and a spatial ring floated before the man. There were exactly 1 million soul crystals in the spatial ring. The man was stunned. "He gave it to me just like that?" In the distance, Yi Xian walked towards the city. The man looked at the spatial ring in front of him in a daze. This was the smoothest robbery he had ever had. A moment later, the man put the spatial ring away and caught up to Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the man. "What? Not enough?" The man said in a low voice, "Brother, is this your first time coming to the city of myriad domains?" Yi Xian nodded. "First time." The man smiled. "Brother, do you know what kind of place this city of myriad domains is?" Yi Xian shook his head. "It's my first time here, so I don't know anything." The man smiled. "I'm Wuxia, from the Divine Dao Nation." Divine Dao Nation. Yi Xian smiled lightly. "Yi Xian." The man spoke in a low voice. "Brother Yi, it's easy for problems to arise if you walk on the streets like this." Yi Xian smiled. "Get robbed?" Wuxia nodded, and then he glanced at the surroundings and said, "Follow me." As soon as he finished speaking, he led Yi Xian to the right. At this moment, a man suddenly appeared before them, and the man glanced at Wuxia before looking at Yi Xian with a hostile expression. Wuxia chuckled. "Li Ka, he's my man." Li Ka glanced coldly at Wuxia. "Your man?" Wuxia nodded. "Mine." Li Ka's face was expressionless. "Is your man that insensible?" Wuxia's eyes narrowed slightly. "What? You're not even going to give me this little bit of face?" A wisp of a ridiculing smile appeared on the corners of Li Ka's mouth. "Face? Wuxia, why should I give you face? Don't think that I don't know that you've already obtained benefits from him. You've obtained benefits yourself, and you're asking us to give you face? I'm giving it to your ancestors." As he said that, he angrily pointed at Yi Xian. "If you don't give me 1 million soul crystals, don't even think about crossing this road." At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared on the spot. Before Wuxia could react, Li Ka's throat was directly pierced by Yi Xian's sword. Instant kill. Wuxia was dumbfounded. Li Ka was also dumbfounded. Yi Xian exerted force with his right hand, and the sword directly pierced through Li Ka's throat, causing blood to spurt out. Li Ka stared at Yi Xian, his eyes filled with resentment. "You're pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger." Yi Xian opened his palm, and Li Ka's storage ring flew into his hand. Li Ka still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly swung his sword. Li Ka was directly erased. Seeing this scene, the corner of Wuxia's mouth twitched. "Damn, this guy is really fierce." Seeing that Yi Xian was about to leave, Wuxia hurriedly followed. "Brother Yi, what are you doing in the city of myriad domains?" Yi Xian subconsciously said, "I'm here to act cool. Oh no, I'm here to gain experience." Wuxia. P.S. New Year, too busy, really too busy. I don't even have time to write every day. Finally, Happy New Year's Eve everyone. Chapter 1918. Wuxia's expression was a little strange. Is this guy here to act cool? At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Brother Wuxia, can you tell me more about the city of myriad domains?" Wuxia hurriedly nodded. "Of course. The city of myriad domains is divided into 3 camps. The first is my Divine Dao Nation, the second is the Wildlands, and the third is the Heavenly Abyss Sacred Gate." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Wildlands? Heavenly Abyss Sacred Gate?" Wuxia nodded. The wildlands are my divine Dao nation's mortal enemy. Back then, when His Majesty the Divine Emperor conquered the various worlds, the wildlands divine race refused to submit. Thus, the Divine Emperor banished them to an extremely remote wildlands continent, which is the Wildlands. Now, the Wildlands celestial race has regained some vitality and has been going against my divine Dao nation. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Why didn't the Divine Emperor directly exterminate the Wildlands celestial race? Wuxia shook his head. I don't know. Yi Xian nodded slightly. What about the Heavenly Abyss Sacred Gate? Wuxia said, the Heavenly Abyss Sacred Gate was once the #1 sect and is still the current #1 sect. Back then, before the Divine Emperor was born, they were the strongest sect in the myriad worlds. Moreover, the Divine Emperor seemed to have a deep relationship with them. But for some reason, they moved away and never stepped into the Divine Dao nation again. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. Then he looked around. Do they usually fight? Wuxia said solemnly, not usually. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Not usually? Wuxia nodded. Not only do they not fight, they usually trade with each other. As he spoke, he pointed to a street in the distance. That's the Black Market Street. If you have any treasures, you can go there to sell them. Yi Xian looked at the street in the distance. There were quite a number of people setting up stalls on the street. Wuxia said, that is the only absolutely safe place in this city because no one dares to make a move there. That place is protected by the 3 factions' bosses. Of course, if you want to enter and sell something, no matter what you sell, you have to hand over 10% of the transaction to the 3 factions' bosses. Yi Xian was a little curious. 3 leaders? Wuxia nodded. Our Divine Dao nation's boss is Wang Lin. This person's background is a little mysterious. There are rumors that he is the crown prince of the Divine Dao nation's #1 clan, the very first clan. There are also rumors that he is a member of the royal family. His true identity is unknown. Yi Xian was curious. How does the very race compare to the Divine Marquis Manor? Wuxia said solemnly. At the beginning, the 2 families were actually equal in strength, because the Divine Marquis and the Supreme Divine Image were the most important figures by the Divine Emperor's side. But as time went on, the Divine Marquis Palace fell behind the very race. This is because the Divine Marquis Manor has never produced any super geniuses, but the very race has produced a few. Yi Xian smiled and asked, what about the Divine Dao nation's royal family? Wuxia hesitated for a moment before he said, Brother, it's not my place to speak about the matters of the imperial family. Yi Xian smiled. What I'm more curious about is that there are so many noble families in the Divine Dao nation. Don't they pose any threat to the imperial power? You should know that if an aristocratic family is powerful enough, they will definitely threaten the imperial power. Wuxia smiled bitterly. How would I dare? Yi Xian was curious. Why wouldn't I dare? Wuxia said solemnly, there are many reasons why the Divine Dao nation's royal family has been able to exist until now, but the main reason is that every generation of Divine Master is not a pushover. Moreover, the Divine Emperor has decreed that the throne of the Divine Dao nation is only passed on to the virtuous, not the eldest. This virtuous also includes women. As long as you have the ability, even a woman can become the queen of the Divine Dao nation. Yi Xian frowned slightly. If a woman is the queen of the Divine Dao nation, this chapter is not over, please continue to the next page. Queen, doesn't that mean that the Divine Dao nation could become someone else's? Wuxia smiled. A woman's child can also inherit the throne, but they must have the direct bloodline of the Divine Dao race. To be more precise, a woman's child's bloodline will be devoured by the Divine Dao bloodline from the moment they are born. Moreover, if a woman is the queen, her child must be born with the Divine Dao surname. Yi Xian said softly, so that's how it is. Wuxia continued. Moreover, the Divine Dao race has an extremely terrifying Divine Dao army left behind by the Divine Emperor. Back then, this Divine Dao army followed the Divine Emperor to conquer the myriad heavens and has never been defeated. Even the strongest barbarian cavalry of the barbarian divine race was defeated by the Divine Dao army. Hearing this, Yi Xian was a little curious. Could his divine emperor token mobilize the divine Dao army? He felt a little uncertain. Ku Xie continued, the boss of the barbarian lands is called Ti Anu. This person is not from the barbarian divine race, but his position in the barbarian divine race is extraordinary. Even some of the direct descendants of the barbarian divine race are willing to obey his orders. Yi Xian asked, what about the Heavenly Abyss Holy Gate? Ku Xie said, the Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden, her name is unknown. She is a very mysterious woman who rarely appears. Yi Xian was a little curious. If they don't fight, then what's the point of this place? Ku Xie pointed in the distance. Behind this Heavenly Abyss city, there is a mountain range, and there is a ruin in the mountain range. No one knows from which era, but that ruin is the real reason everyone came here. However, we can no longer enter its depths because it involves the 10th layer of space-time. Yi Xian smiled. The divine Dao nation didn't want to take it for themselves? Ku Xie shook his head. They wanted to take it for themselves, but in the end, they compromised. Because if the divine Dao nation wanted to take it for themselves, the Heavenly Abyss Holy Gate and the barbarian lands would join forces. This is not what the divine Dao nation wants to see, because the Heavenly Abyss Holy Gate has always been neutral. Yi Xian asked, the divine Dao nation has never thought of roping in the Heavenly Abyss Holy Gate to deal with the barbarian lands? Ku Xie smiled bitterly, I don't know about that. Yi Xian smiled, Brother Ku Xie, let's part ways here. With that he walked into the distance. Ku Xie hesitated for a moment, then asked, Brother Yi, where are you going? Yi Xian didn't answer and disappeared into the distance without looking back. Ku Xie glanced at Yi Xian, who was at the end of her line of sight, and said softly, what a weirdo. Yi Xian directly left the city of Myriad Domain and came to a mountain range. His goal was also the ruin. He actually didn't have much interest in the treasures in the ruin, because with Xiao Ta and the Azure Profound Sword, he really didn't have much interest in other treasures. In a short while, Yi Xian came to the depths of the mountain range. At a glance, the mountain range in the distance was hazy, completely illusory. Not simple. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian continued forward. When he came to the deepest part of the mountain range, Yi Xian frowned because he discovered that the space-time here was somewhat different. The space-time here had changed. The place he was in now was actually the 8th layer of space-time, but nothing around him had changed. What's going on? Yi Xian frowned. This place isn't simple. After a short while, Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings and continued forward. When he crossed a small river, he stopped because he discovered that he'd entered the 9th layer of space-time. The 9th layer of space-time. Yi Xian frowned. This place was so weird. The further he went, this chapter isn't finished, please continue. The space-time here was stronger. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian continued forward. When he entered the 9th layer of space-time, Yi Xian secretly became vigilant. Even though there were no changes in the surroundings, he still didn't dare be careless. He continued forward, and it didn't take long for him to arrive at a valley. After entering the valley, his expression gradually became serious because he noticed that the space-time pressure in the valley was growing stronger and stronger. At this moment, he didn't have the Azure Profound Sword, so he could ignore the space-time pressure. So, he had to be careful. At this moment, Yi Xian stopped in his tracks. Not far in front of him sat a man. The man's head was lowered, and there was no sign of life. It was obvious that he died. Yi Xian walked in front of the man. The man was still holding a storage ring in his hand, and there was a spear on the ground. The spear was pure white, and it was obvious that it wasn't an ordinary item. Yi Xian glanced at the man, and he was a little curious. How did this guy die? At this moment, footsteps sounded from the side. Yi Xian turned to look. Not far away, a woman was slowly walking over. The woman was wearing a dark purple dress, and her face was covered with a veil. Her true appearance couldn't be seen, but her figure was excellent. The woman looked at Yi Xian. Who are you? Yi Xian cupped his fists. Yi Xian. The woman frowned slightly. Yi Xian. Yi Xian nodded. The woman shook her head. Never heard of it. Xian smiled. Miss, you are? The woman looked at Xian and didn't say anything. Xian shrugged and walked into the distance. At this moment, the woman said, if you continue forward, you will die. Xian looked into the distance. There were 2 mountains in the distance, and between the mountains was a crevice. Below the crevice was a Xiaodao. It was very small, and only enough for one person to pass through. Xian turned to look at the woman and asked, what's in front? The woman said, the gate of the ruins. Xian asked again, Miss, do you know what ruins are inside? The woman looked at Xian and didn't say anything. Xian blinked. Am I very handsome? The woman was slightly taken aback. What was he talking about? Xian smiled. Miss, if I'm not wrong, you should be the mysterious Heaven Abyss Holy Maiden, right? The woman nodded slightly. Yes. Xian smiled. My name is Xian. What about you? The Heaven Abyss Holy Maiden didn't say anything again. Xian shook his head, turned around, and left. The Heaven Abyss Holy Maiden said again, you will die. Xian didn't even look back. None of your business. With that, he quickly walked toward the Xiaodao. Arrogant? I'm more arrogant than you. Hearing Xian's words, the Heaven Abyss Holy Maiden frowned. How rude. In the distance, Xian had already walked in front of the Xiaodao. When he was about to step into the Xiaodao, his expression suddenly changed, because he realized that the space-time in front of him was no longer the 9th space-time. The 10th space-time. The space-time in front of him was already the 10th space-time, and the space-time pressure in it was no longer something he could withstand. If he forced his way in, as the Heaven Abyss Holy Maiden said, he would really die. But if he retreated now, wouldn't it be very embarrassing? And it would be embarrassing in front of a woman. Xian thought about it, then turned around and left. Damn it. He didn't have any face, so how could he lose it? End of this chapter. Chapter 1919. Seeing Xian retreat, the Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden's eyes were calm, as if she was not surprised at all. After Xian retreated to the side, he sat cross-legged on the ground and pondered. The 10th space-time. He had already felt the 10th space-time just now, and the space-time pressure contained in the 10th space-time was not something he could withstand at the moment. At this moment, Xian was a little curious. What kind of relic was this? Would there be an 11th space-time behind it? At this moment, the Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden walked to Xian's side and glanced at Xian. Seamless realm. Xian ignored her. The Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden continued, you were able to reach here with the seamless realm, not simple at all. Xian still did not speak. Seeing this, the Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden frowned slightly. At this moment, Xian suddenly got up and walked to the front of Xiaodao. Looking at the Xiaodao in front of him, Xian was silent for a moment, and he suddenly stepped out. As his foot landed, the space-time around the Xiaodao directly distorted and became illusory. Seeing this scene, the Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden's pupils suddenly shrank. At this moment, Xian retreated again, and at this moment, his eyes were filled with excitement. The reason he could step into the 10th space-time just now was because he had used the mysterious space-time in Xiaota's body. He could already use Xiaota to fuse with that mysterious space-time, and that mysterious space-time had absolute suppression on the 10th space-time. Unfortunately, he could not fuse with that mysterious space-time for too long. However, he was not in a hurry. He could take it slowly. At this moment, the Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden suddenly asked, how did you do it? Xian ignored the Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden and sat cross-legged to recover his vitality. Every time he used that mysterious space-time, it consumed a lot of energy. Seeing that Xian did not reply, the Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden frowned slightly. I'm asking you a question. Xian turned to look at the Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden. Am I very familiar with you? Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden. Xian retracted his gaze and continued to devour the soul crystals. Xian, liked to make friends, but he didn't like to make friends with arrogant people. Arrogant? I'm more arrogant than you. The Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden glanced at Xian and did not ask further. She also had a temper. An hour later, Yixian suddenly stood up and walked toward Xiao Dao. The heavenly abyss saintess hurried to look at Yixian curiously. Yixian stepped into the Xiao Dao. The moment he stepped into the Xiao Dao, the 10th space-time in the Xiao Dao area became illusory. It wasn't that it couldn't withstand Yixian, it was that it couldn't withstand that mysterious space-time. After taking 3 steps, Yixian suddenly retreated. Seeing this, the heavenly abyss holy maiden frowned. Why did you retreat? Continue walking. Yixian turned to look at the heavenly abyss holy maiden. What does it have to do with you? Heavenly abyss holy maiden. Yixian sat cross-legged on the ground and continued to devour soul crystals to recover his energy. The heavenly abyss holy maiden walked to Yixian's side and looked at Yixian. What secret technique did you use to step into the 10th space-time? This secret technique consumes a lot of energy, and you can't use it for a long time, right? Yixian didn't answer and continued to devour soul crystals. The heavenly abyss holy maiden glanced at Yixian and didn't say anything else. A moment later, Yixian suddenly stood up and walked toward Xiao Dao. Just like that, Yixian entered the 10th space-time again and again. At first, he could only take 3 steps, but now, he could take 10 steps. Not only that, after fusing with that mysterious space-time, he could last for 12 breaths. He was passing through the 10th space-time in front of him. Qingqing Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yixian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Yixian's position as the crown prince will be removed and Yi Lang will succeed him. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. And on both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's biological sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you remove him for no reason? The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting? Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and his life is uncertain. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to remove him from his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. Whether he is removed or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this moment, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder said coldly, then flog 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, even now he is fighting for the clan, but the clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang, and he knew that this was his chance to show off. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of crown prince. It is the wish of everyone. What are you shouting for? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen, but she did not cry. She just covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. I will go through fire and water for the crown prince, even if I have to die 10,000 times. Yi Lang nodded slightly. Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show any mercy, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. Immediately he grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, which was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the South Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak, when Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu once more. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and said, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu. As he walked up to Yi Ling, seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides there were the Yi clan elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for?" Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides. "Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. But now, the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is unfair." Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he discards his position or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog her 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now he is fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of prince, and it's everyone's wish. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. But she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate will go through fire and water for the prince, and I will risk my life for him. Yi Lang nodded. Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show mercy, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to see something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his expression was frighteningly gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his expression turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his expression changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's expression turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, Your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Peng! Chapter 1920. Insult. Xiong Ho chuckled and said, Little big brother, she didn't insult you because she can see through your nature. Your nature is lustful, that's why she said that. Yi Xian was speechless. Shen Qin looked at Yi Xian with an unfriendly expression. Do you know what you've done? Yi Xian said solemnly, I'm just passing by. Shen Qin pointed at Xiong Ho, a little angry. Do you know who she is? Yi Xian glanced at Xiong Ho and shook his head. I don't know. Shen Qin glared at Yi Xian. You're in big trouble. Yi Xian was speechless. I didn't F** King do anything. Did he cause trouble again? At this time, the divine quilt looked at Xiong Ho. What do you want to do? Xiong Ho blinked. You've trapped me for so long and now I'm out. You ask me what I want to do? Shen Qin, can you not ask such an idiotic question? You'll make me despise you. Shen Qin looked at Xiong Ho and didn't say anything. However, the temperature was dropping at a terrifying rate. Xiong Ho, on the other hand, looked calm with a faint smile on her face. At the side, Yi Xian suddenly said, Big shots, I'm just passing by. Go ahead. With that, he turned around and left. Meanwhile, the divine quilt suddenly said, You can't leave. Yi Xian looked at the divine quilt. Why? However, Shen Qin did not say anything. Xiong Ho laughed and said, Little brother, she wants to use the mysterious space-time in your body to seal me. You're not going to help him, are you? As she spoke, she smiled faintly. Her smile was a little horrifying. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, I'm really not interested in interfering in the enmity between seniors. I'm just passing by. At this time, Xiao suddenly said, Young lord, when did you become such a coward? Yi Xian's face darkened. Do you think I'm like you? Big brother, even if you want to be arrogant, you have to look at your partner, okay? Xiaota said calmly, under 3 swords, who do we need to be afraid of? Yi Xian had a headache. He really wanted to give this Xiaota a stab. Ever since he was transformed, this Xiaota didn't even put his father in his eyes. If this went on, something would happen sooner or later. Meanwhile, Xiongho smiled and said, Big brother, they won't let you off because you have a mysterious space within you. They'll definitely think of a way to obtain it and use it against me. Yi Xian looked at Xiongho. What about you? You can kill me now and obtain the mysterious space-time in my body, can't you? Xiongho rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. I'm not that bad. Shen Qin spoke indifferently. The reason she hasn't attacked is because she doesn't know your origins. But I believe that she definitely won't let you go, because once she obtains the mysterious space-time in your body, her strength will undergo an earth-shaking change. Xiongho glared at the divine quilt. Don't try to sow discord between us. Yi Xian was silent. He felt like he'd been swept into a huge vortex. Shen Qin intended to say something, but Xiongho suddenly smiled and said, Shen Qin, let's stop reminiscing for today. We'll catch up another day. As she spoke, she waved her right hand. Bang! Shen Qin's image was instantly obliterated. Xiongho gazed at Yi Xian and smiled, Let's go. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, Let's go. Xiongho blinked. We're on the same side now. Yi Xian was speechless. Xiongho smiled, Don't worry, I won't hurt you. Yi Xian asked, Miss Xiongho, are you from the divine Dao nation? Xiongho took the candied fruit in Yi Xian's hand, and then she said, No. However, I know a little about the divine Dao nation you speak of, Dao Yi. The one who founded the divine Dao nation is called Shen Dao Ming, right? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know. All I know is that the world calls him the divine emperor. Xiongho smiled, Then it should be that guy. Yi Xian said solemnly, Miss Xiongho knows the divine emperor? Xiongho nodded. He comes from the same place as me and that Shen Qin. He's an extraordinary person. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. Do you have enmity with him? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, I almost do. If Qin really destroyed the divine Dao nation with a single sword strike, then it would be a great enmity. Of course, he didn't panic. If he had the guts, then he would go look for Qin. Xiongho sized up Yi Xian, and then she said, The mysterious space-time within your body. Yi Xian smiled. You want it? Xiongho blinked. Are you willing to give it to me? Yi Xian looked straight at Xiongho. If I don't give it to you, will you take it from me? Xiongho looked at Yi Xian for a moment, and then she grinned. No. Yi Xian smiled. Then I won't give it to you. Xiongho smiled, and then she said, Let's go. As she spoke, she walked into the distance. When Yi Xian and Xiongho walked out of the Xiao Dao, Xiongho turned to look, and in an instant, the small hall behind her directly burst into flames. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's expression changed. Even the 10th and 11th space-time were burning. Xiongho turned to look at Yi Xian. Let's go. As she spoke, she and Yi Xian left this strange space-time. As soon as they left, the two saw the heavenly abyss holy lady, and beside her stood a man. Xiongho looked at Yi Xian, and said with a smile, Your friend? Yi Xian shook his head. Xiongho smiled slightly, and didn't speak. At this moment, the man beside the heavenly abyss holy lady suddenly said, You're from the divine Dao nation? Yi Xian looked at the man. You are? The man smiled. Wang Lin. Yi Xian sized up the man. So this was the boss of the divine Dao nation in the city of Myriad Domain, Wang Lin. Wang Lin glanced at Xiongho beside Yi Xian, and said with a smile, Young Master Yi, this is? Yi Xian was about to speak, but Xiongho suddenly smiled and said, I'm his younger sister. Younger sister. Yi Xian was speechless. Another younger sister. Wang Lin smiled. Younger sister? Xiongho smiled. Do you have a problem? Wang Lin stared at Xiongho. Young lady should have come out from inside. Wang Lin nodded. Yes. Hearing this, Wang Lin and the Heavenly Abyss Holy Lady looked at each other. Then Wang Lin looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi is very capable. We spent more than 10 years to enter the mystic realm, but young Master Yi came today and entered it. Amazing. Yi Xian smiled. If you have something to say, just say it. Don't beat around the bush. Wang Lin smiled. Young Master Yi, since you're a straightforward person, then I'll say it directly. We want a share of the ruins. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, then looked at Xiongho beside him. She came out from the ruins. If you want to share, then look for her. Xiongho. Wang Lin and the Heavenly Abyss Holy Lady looked at Xiongho. In fact, their real target was Xiongho, who came out from the ruins. Xiongho looked at the two of them and smiled. You want to share? Wang Lin and the Heavenly Abyss Holy Lady had a trace of wariness in their eyes. At this moment, Xiongho suddenly took a step forward, and in an instant, Wang Lin and the Heavenly Abyss Holy Lady burst into flames. Their expressions changed drastically, and they resisted frantically, but it was useless. At this moment, the two of them were terrified. Xiongho suddenly looked at Yi Xian and smiled. If you plead on their behalf, I can let them go. Hearing this, Wang Lin and the Heavenly Abyss Holy Lady quickly looked at Yi Xian, their eyes full of pleading. Yi Xian smiled. Lady Xiongho, whether you kill them or not is your own business. What does it have to do with me? If you want to kill them, then kill them. If you don't, then don't. Don't drag me into this. Xiongho smiled. Then I'll kill them. At this moment, Wang Lin suddenly said, Yi Xian, if I die here today, the very ones will not let you go. *CK. Yi Xian was in disbelief. Big brother, you have to understand that the one who killed you is this little girl. What does it have to do with me? Have you been burned senseless? Wang Lin said crazily, You can save us both. Yi Xian asked, Why should I save you? Wang Lin roared, The very ones will not let you go. At this moment, the Heavenly Abyss Holy Lady suddenly said, If young Master Yi is willing to save us, the Heavenly Abyss Holy Sect will reward you handsomely. Yi Xian looked at Xiongho. This woman has a nice mouth. Let her go. Xiongho's lips curled up. I'll give you face. As she said this, she waved her right hand, and the flames on the Heavenly Abyss Holy Lady disappeared. The Heavenly Abyss Holy Lady collapsed to the ground. On the other hand, Wang Lin was dumbfounded. He wanted to say something, but Yi Xian said, I don't know the man. Wang Lin was speechless. A moment later, Wang Lin was burned into nothingness by the mysterious flames. Yi Xian looked at the Heavenly Abyss Holy Lady. At this moment, the Heavenly Abyss Holy Lady was extremely weak. It was as if her soul could disappear at any moment. The Heavenly Abyss Holy Lady looked at Yi Xian and said weakly, Thank you. Yi Xian smiled. You said you would give me benefits. The Heavenly Abyss Holy Lady nodded. I will. Yi Xian smiled. I'll be waiting. As he said this, he looked at Xiongho. Miss Xiongho, where are you going? Xiongho licked her sugar-coated hawes, then said, I'll go wherever you go. Yi Xian's face darkened. What do you mean? Xiongho smiled and said, It's exactly what it means. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Miss Xiongho, you're free now. If you want revenge, go find that divine quilt. Why are you following me? Xiongho smiled. I've been sealed for too long. I need to heal now. Yi Xian's face darkened. If you need to heal, then why are you following me? I can't heal you. Xiongho licked her sugar-coated hawes and smiled. Why don't you want me to follow you? I can help you fight. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Miss Xiongho, I've already said it. I don't want to get involved in the matter between you and that divine quilt. Now that you're free, you can go do what you need to do, all right? Xiongho looked at Yi Xian and smiled. I won't. I want to follow you. Yi Xian was silent. He was a little angry. He really wanted to kill this guy with a sword. At this time, Xiaota suddenly said, Young master, This woman is really arrogant. But it's okay, after we get out, let her use the green profound sword to send Sister Tianming, then she'll behave. My sister Tianming specializes in all kinds of arrogant people. Yi Xian. Chapter 1921. Yi Xian couldn't do anything about the Xiong Ho's entanglement, who asked him to be unable to defeat it. At this moment, the Heavenly Abyss Saintess recovered a little. She looked at Yi Xian and said, "Thank you, young Master Yi, for saving my life." Yi Xian said with smile, "Saintess, I am looking forward to the benefits you are going to give me." The Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden hesitated for a moment, then said, "Young Master Yi, can you follow me to the Heavenly Abyss Divine Sect?" Yi Xian frowned. Tianyuan's Sacred Sect? The Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden nodded. Yi Xian turned to look at Xiong Ho. Xiong Ho giggled, "Whatever you say." Yi Xian thought about it and said, "Then let's go to the Tianyuan Divine Sect." Xiong Ho glanced at the Heaven Abyss Holy Maiden and Yi Xian, and an almost undetectable smile appeared on her face. Moments later, Yi Xian and Xiong Ho followed the Heavenly Abyss Saintess to the Heavenly Abyss Sacred Sect. He had gained a lot from this trip to the mystic realm. Now, after fusing with the mysterious space-time, he could persist for an hour. Not only that, but he could also throw the tower 3 times in a short period of time. The only pity was that he still couldn't use the space-time pressure of the mysterious space-time. If he could use the space-time pressure of the mysterious space-time, his strength would rise to another level. There was another thing that was a pain in the ass, and that was the Xiong Ho. He couldn't get rid of this little girl now, and he knew that there would be big trouble soon. Divine Dao Nation. Inside the palace, Musa walked to the front of the Divine Dao plume and bowed slightly. Wang Lin is dead. Divine Dao Ling frowned slightly. It couldn't have been that guy who killed him, right? Wang Lin told us that he was killed by Yi Xian. However, according to the information we received, he was killed by someone else. Musa said in a deep voice. Divine Dao Ling was perplexed. Then why did Wang Lin send a message back saying that young Master Yi killed him? Musa shook his head. I don't know. The Divine Dao Ling's expression darkened. You're still trying to scam me even after you're dead. What's wrong with him? Musa said, Your Majesty, we have received news that the very ones are looking for young Master Yi. The Divine Dao Ling immediately got up and left. Musa was stunned, and then he said, Your Majesty, where are you going? The Divine Dao plume didn't even turn its head. Musa still wanted to say something, but in the next moment, his expression changed drastically because he noticed that there were 12 people following behind the Divine Dao feather. These 12 people were all dressed in white armor and had golden sabers at their waists. Divine Dao Army. Musa was a little dumbfounded. Why was he mobilizing the Divine Dao Army? Not long after Yi Xian's group of 3 left the City of Infinite Domains, the space in front of them suddenly trembled violently. Then, a powerful aura swept out from the trembling space. Yi Xian was speechless. He knew it had to be the very ones. Right at this moment, the trembling space suddenly split open, and then a middle-aged man walked out from within. Yi Xian's face sank when he saw this middle-aged man. Very strong. He had definitely surpassed the life chart realm. Next to Yi Xian, the Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden said in a low voice, Taiyan, the leader of the very ones. Taiyan looked at Yi Xian's group of 3. Finally his gaze fell on Xiong Ho. When he saw Xiong Ho, his eyes became serious. Yi Xian immediately said, The one who killed your people is this lady. If you want revenge, please do it. Xiong Ho rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. Little brother, you are so heartless. Yi Xian ignored Xiong Ho. Taiyan looked at Xiong Ho for a long time. After a long time, he asked, What is your name? Xiong Ho giggled. Don't you want revenge? Why aren't you doing it? Taiyan's expression was a little ugly. He wanted revenge, but he could not see through this little girl. The very ones were not weak in the Divine Dao Nation, but they were not invincible. Even the very ones did not dare to say they were invincible. Moreover, this little girl had walked out of the relic. Xiong Ho suddenly laughed. If you don't do it, Then I will. As she spoke, she opened her palm, and a flame suddenly appeared in her hand. Tai Yan's expression changed drastically. He suddenly stomped his right foot. In an instant, the surrounding space-time seemed to collapse and pour down. Yi Xian's expression darkened. This guy is fierce. Xianxia smirked, and the flame in her hand suddenly flew out. The next moment, Tai Yan's body began to burn. Boom! In an instant, Tai Yan's physical body collapsed. Tai Yan was shocked. His soul wanted to escape, but the flames still wrapped around him. Just as Tai Yan's soul was about to dissipate, a golden light suddenly descended from the sky and enveloped him. Under the golden light, the flame gradually disappeared. Xianxia turned to look. Not far away, a woman slowly walked over. It was the divine Dao plume. The divine Dao plume waved its right hand, and the powerful flame around Tai Yan disappeared. Tai Yan's expression eased up, and then he bowed slightly to the divine Dao plume. Thank you, Your Majesty. Yi Xian glanced at the divine Dao plume. Damn it. So this woman is strong as well. Fortunately, she courted death and went to look for Qing. Otherwise, I would probably be in trouble. The divine Dao plume gazed at Yi Xian and grinned. Young Master Yi. Yi Xian smiled. Miss Ling, we meet again. Miss Ling. Tai Yan's expression instantly changed when he heard Yi Xian. This fellow actually dared to address His Majesty by name. To his shock, the divine Dao plume actually wasn't angry. The divine Dao plume sized up Yi Xian, and then she smiled. Young Master Ye's strength has improved by quite a bit. Yi Xian smiled but didn't say anything. The divine Dao plume turned around to gaze at Xianxia. As she gazed at Xianxia, the smile in her eyes gradually turned solemn. What's your name? Xianxia smiled. You're the descendant of Shen Dao Ming. The divine Dao plume smiled. You know my ancestor. Xianxia nodded. I do. Your ancestor isn't bad. As for you, as she spoke, she sized up the divine Dao plume and smiled. You're barely passable. The divine Dao plume grinned. Senior, this is a misunderstanding. Can we just let it go? Xianxia turned to look at Yi Xian. I'll give him face. Yi Xian was speechless. This fellow dragged me into this again. The divine Dao plume turned to look at Yi Xian and grinned. Young Master Yi, please put in a good word for me. Yi Xian glanced at Tai Yan. He wants to kill me. The divine Dao plume turned to look at Tai Yan, and the latter hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, this is a misunderstanding. I came here to meet young Master Yi. Yi Xian blinked. Meet me? Tai Yan hurriedly nodded. Yes, I've long heard of young Master Ye's outstanding talent. I've admired you for a long time, so I specially came to meet young Master Yi today. Now that I've met you, it's true that hearing about you is not as good as meeting you in person. Yi Xian suddenly shook his head and smiled. You don't have to do this, sir. You just need to know who killed your ultimate tribe people. Tai Yan hurriedly nodded. I already know. This has nothing to do with young Master Yi. Yi Xian smiled, then looked at the Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden. Holy Maiden, we won't be going to the Heavenly Abyss Holy Sect. Let's part ways here. The Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden frowned, somewhat puzzled. Why? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, not saying a word. At this moment, Xianxia laughed. He originally wanted to bring me to the Heavenly Abyss Holy Sect and then use you to get rid of me. But now, he realized that neither the Divine Dao Nation nor the Heavenly Abyss Holy Sect can get rid of me. Do you understand? The Heavenly Abyss Holy Maiden glanced at Yi Xian, not saying a word. Yi Xian looked at Xianxia. Let's go. With that, he turned and left. Xianxia licked her sugar-coated paws, then followed. Seeing the two leave, Tai Yan immediately heaved a heavy sigh of relief. As if thinking of something, he looked at the divine Dao Ling. Your Majesty, who exactly is that young Master Yi? The divine Dao Ling said plainly, didn't you see that even that little girl didn't dare to hurt him? Tai Yan smiled bitterly. The divine Dao Ling said again, go back and heal your injuries. From now on, don't provoke this young Master Yi. Tai Yan bowed slightly. Understood. With that, he turned and left. The divine Dao Ling watched Yixian and Xiongho disappear in the distance, a hint of worry flashing in his eyes. Yixian brought Xiongho back to the women's academy, then he brought Xiongho to Miss Ding. Yixian looked at Xiongho, "Talk to Miss Ding." With that he turned and left. Xiongho looked at Miss Ding and licked her sugar-coated paws, not saying a word. Miss Ding said with a smile, "He has that mysterious space-time on him. You want it but are afraid. What are you afraid of?" They were afraid of his background. "If I'm not wrong, you want to find out more about him now. Once you find out more about him and he doesn't pose much of a threat to you, you will not hesitate to kill him, right?" Xiongho smiled and said, "You're right." Miss Ding smiled and did not say anything else. Xiongho blinked. "Aren't you worried?" Miss Ding said with a smile, "What should I be worried about?" Xiongho looked at Miss Ding. "Aren't you worried that I'll really kill him?" Miss Ding patted Xiongho's shoulder lightly. "All his enemies are toys that his sister left for him." With that she turned and left. Xiongho suddenly asked, "Is his sister very strong?" Miss Ding did not turn her head. "Not very strong. You can meet her in the future if you have the chance." Xiongho licked her sugar-coated paws and said with a smile, "I look forward to it." In the distance, Miss Ding shook her head with a smile and did not say anything else. No one wanted to meet that woman. Of course, that was except for Yixian. After Yixian entered Xiaota, he started to use the Azure Profound Sword to fuse with that mysterious spacetime. After returning, Miss Ding returned the Azure Profound Sword to him. With the Azure Profound Sword, he was confident that he could unleash the power of that mysterious spacetime. While Yixian was cultivating, Xiongho did not leave the women's college. Instead, she wandered around the women's college. 1 month later, in the Divine Dao Nation's palace, Musa suddenly entered the palace. He quickly walked to the Divine Dao Ling and bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, something big has happened." The Divine Dao Ling put down the ancient book in his hand. "What is it?" Musa's expression was somewhat grave. "I just received news that a group of mysterious experts suddenly entered our Divine Dao Nation and headed straight for the women's college." Divine Dao Ling frowned. "Who is it?" Musa shook his head. "I don't know." The Divine Dao Plume fell silent. "Could their target be young Master Yi?" Musa asked solemnly. The Divine Dao Plume immediately said, "He can't die. At least not in my Divine Dao Nation." Musa was confused. "Why?" The Divine Dao Ling said softly, "If he dies in my Divine Dao Nation, my Divine Dao Nation will be buried with him. Understand?" Musa. P.S. It's too inconvenient to pay New Year's greetings at home. Where could he go? Without a car, he had to wait for a bus for an hour and a half. It was too scary. Chapter 1922. In a small courtyard in the Women's Academy, Miss Ding, who was reading, suddenly raised her head, and then she frowned. A woman was flying over from afar, and there were 6 black-robed figures behind her. The woman in the lead was Xianxia. Meanwhile, Yixian appeared by Miss Ding's side, and his face fell when he saw Xianxia. She came so quickly. Xiongho appeared here as well, and then she glanced at Xianxia and grinned. "Xianxia, you're a little too fast." Xianxia glanced at Xiongho, and then her gaze descended onto Yixian. "Young Master Yi, we meet again." Yixian smiled. "Miss Xianxia, we won't interfere in the matters between the two of you." Xianxia shook her head. "It was you who let her go." Yixian was slightly helpless. "I didn't do it on purpose." Xianxia gazed at Yixian. "We want to ask young Master Yi for a favor." Yixian frowned when he heard this. Xianxia asked, "Is young Master Yi unwilling?" Yixian spoke in a low voice. "Let me tell you, my Aunt Ding is here, so don't threaten me." As he spoke, he moved behind Miss Ding. His father might not care about him, but he would definitely care about Aunt Ding. Miss Ding shook her head and smiled when she heard Yixian. "This fellow is really like a child." Xianxia gazed at Miss Ding. "We want to ask young Master Yi for a favor, is that all right?" Miss Ding shook her head. "No." Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly. "Then I won't hold back." As she spoke, She opened her palm and was about to attack. Meanwhile, Miss Ding suddenly said, "Isn't your target Miss Xiongho?" Xiongho laughed. "Actually, her main target isn't me, but young brother Yi. So long as she obtains that mysterious space, then she can easily seal me. Conversely, if young brother Yi helps me, then she can never seal me." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Then you deal with her." Xiongho rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. "She has 7 people and I'm alone. I can't beat them. Unless you help me." Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, the divine quilt in the skies suddenly made a move. She pressed down lightly with her right hand. Boom! The entire space began to boil. Down below, Lady Ding smiled faintly. She opened her palm, and a ray of sword light suddenly soared into the sky. Boom! Before everyone could recover from their shock, the divine quilt was blasted a few tens of thousands of meters away, and when it finally stopped, its physical body had completely vanished. Only its soul remained, and its soul was extremely weak. Everyone was dumbfounded by this scene. Xiongho's expression changed as well. She stared at Miss Ding and said nothing. At this moment, Lady Ding opened her palm, and the sword light returned to her hand before disappearing. Yi Xian glanced at Miss Ding. Just as he had guessed, his father did leave something for Aunt Ding to save her life. In the distance, the divine quilt looked at Miss Ding in disbelief. "You," Miss Ding smiled. "Leave the women's academy. I'll only say this once." The divine quilt glanced at Miss Ding before retreating with the 6 people behind her. Yi Xian looked at Xiongho. "She's seriously injured now. Aren't you going to deal with her?" Xiongho rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. "Don't you see that there are 6 people behind her?" Yi Xian said in a low voice, "But she's seriously injured now. This is a good opportunity for you to kill her." Xiongho blinked. "Why don't we join forces?" Yi Xian pursed his lips and turned to leave. Xiongho licked her candied fruit, then looked at Miss Ding. "That sword light wasn't yours. Please continue to the next page." Miss Ding smiled. "It really wasn't mine." Xiongho hurriedly asked, "Whose was it?" Miss Ding smiled. "I'm not telling you." With that, she turned to leave. Xiongho remained silent. Outside the women's academy, the divine quilt stopped with the 6 people. At this moment, all 7 of them had extremely grave expressions. Especially the divine quilt in the lead. She was almost insta-killed by that sword light. Whose sword light was that? Right at this moment, an old man behind her frowned and turned to look. Not far away, a woman walked out. It was the divine quilt. The divine quilt looked at the divine quilt. "Who are you?" The divine quilt frowned. "And who are you?" The divine quilt smiled. "You're asking me who I am in my territory?" The divine quilt said, "You're the ruler of the divine Dao nation." The divine quilt smiled. The divine quilt was expressionless. "This matter has nothing to do with your divine Dao nation." The divine quilt smiled. "Understood." With that, she turned to leave. After the divine quilt left, an old man beside the divine quilt said, "This woman is not simple." There were many mysterious and powerful auras in the surroundings just now. The divine quilt's expression was calm. Her ancestor was a great figure. The old man said, "Divine daughter, what should we do next? It'll be extremely disadvantageous to us if that young man helps Xiongho." The divine quilt shook her head and sighed in silence. A short while later, the divine quilt said, "We can't allow that young man to help Xiongho. However, that young man is hostile towards us now, so it will only backfire if I go." The old man said in a low voice, "Then what should we do next?" The divine quilt fell silent for a moment before she said, "That young man possesses a mysterious space that can suppress numerous special types of space. What do you think the Tendo sect will do if they find out?" The old man hesitated for a moment before he said, "Divine daughter, you mean that we should get someone else to do the dirty work?" The divine quilt nodded. "Go back and do it." The old man bowed slightly. "Understood." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. The divine quilt closed her eyes slowly. If she was given another chance, she would try using a soft approach. Unfortunately, they were enemies now, so it was useless even if she tried using a soft approach. On the other side, the divine quilt arrived at Miss Ding's courtyard, and she smiled upon seeing her. "Miss Ding, please don't hold back if you need my divine Dao nation's help." Miss Ding smiled. "Thank you." The divine quilt spoke in a low voice. "Those people aren't simple at all." Miss Ding smiled. "It's fine. Miss Ling doesn't have to worry about it. We'll deal with it ourselves." The divine quilt smiled. "Understood." She stood up and left as she spoke. Miss Ding remained silent after the divine quilt left, and then she stood up and left after a short while. Within a room, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground while the space around him gradually warped. A mysterious space. After he relied on Xiao Ta, he was able to fuse with this mysterious space. Now, he was going to utilize the green profound sword to utilize this mysterious space. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword appeared within it. He waved it lightly, and the space before him instantly became illusory. Yi Xian instantly became excited. It really was possible. He was able to exert a little bit of spatial pressure through the green profound sword just now. Yi Xian gazed at the green profound sword in his hand and sighed with emotion. This green profound sword really is quite terrifying, and it seems like there's no space that it can't control. This chapter isn't over. Please continue to the next page. Yi Xian didn't think too much about it, and he continued. After that, Yi Xian cultivated like a madman every single day. In his opinion, this was the best time to cultivate because he had Aunt Ding's protection. Xiong Ho sat cross-legged in a courtyard, and her entire body was covered in flames. Healing. Around 2 hours later, Xiong Ho slowly opened her eyes. At this moment, her injuries were completely healed. Meanwhile, a figure appeared behind Xiong Ho, and it slowly knelt down. "Leader, that goddess is heavily injured, so why don't we just kill her?" Xiong Ho glanced at the figure. "Idiot. Who'll deal with that young brother Yi if we kill her?" The figure hesitated for a moment before it said, "Leader, that young man is as weak as a chicken. Not to mention you, even I can kill him with ease." "Leader, why?" "Shut up." Xiong Ho glanced coldly at the figure. "You idiot. Can't you see that our young brother Yi has backing?" The figure puckered his lips. "Leader is invincible." Xiong Ho shook her head and sighed. "Hurry up and go back. Call your immortal over. I'm so scared with your stupid teammate here." The figure was speechless. After the figure left, Xiong Ho slowly closed her eyes. Actually, she had a headache as well. She'd wanted to do it for a long time, but she'd endured it in the end, because she couldn't see through the mysterious space-time, and it was precisely because she couldn't see through it that she had some misgivings. As it turned out, her misgivings were right. She wasn't confident in being able to withstand the mysterious sword light in Miss Ding's hand. A moment later, Xiong Ho stood up and left. A month later, Yi Xian was able to utilize the space-time pressure of the mysterious space-time. Now, killing a life-soul realm expert was like killing a chicken to him. Moreover, he was able to suppress all space-time after fusing with the mysterious space-time, including the 9th, 10th, and even the 11th space-time. These space-times couldn't withstand his mysterious space-time at all. Even he himself didn't know what level of strength he possessed. On this day, Yi Xian found Xiong Ho. Seeing that Yi Xian had taken the initiative to look for her, Xiong Ho was a little surprised. "Little brother Yi, why are you looking for me?" Yi Xian smiled. "I want to spar with you." Xiong Ho blinked. "Spar with me?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." Xiong Ho shook her head and smiled. "Little brother Yi, I know that your mysterious space-time is very powerful, but as far as I know, you don't seem to be able to control it. Even if you can control it, you won't be my match. Because your level is too low." Yi Xian smiled. "It's okay, I'm just trying." Xiong Ho nodded. "Then make your move." Yi Xian opened his palm and the azure profound sword appeared in his hand. The next moment he slashed down with the sword. As the sword slashed down, the space-time in front of him shattered and annihilated. Xiong Ho narrowed her eyes and punched out. Boom! Yi Xian was blasted into the 10th layer of space-time. At the same time, the entire 10th layer of spacetime started burning and turned into a hell of fire. However, Xianxia was also slashed into the abyss of the 10th layer of spacetime by Yi Xian's sword. However, the abyss of spacetime could not do anything to her. At this moment, Xianxia's expression became solemn. However, the corner of Yi Xian's mouth curled up into a smile. Just now, he didn't use the spacetime pressure of the mysterious spacetime. That sword was the same as when he threw Xiaota. Now, he had a rough idea of his own combat strength. If he used the spacetime pressure of the mysterious spacetime, he could fight with Xianxia. End of this chapter. Chapter 1923. Xianxia glanced at Yi Xian, her heart incomparably shocked. This youth actually slashed her into the space-time abyss. One had to know that Yi Xian was merely at the seamless realm, while she was several realms higher than Yi Xian. Mysterious space-time. Xianxia glanced at Yi Xian. She knew that it was the mysterious space-time power. What kind of space-time was that? Xianxia was getting more and more curious. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Miss Fierce Ho, I'll seek guidance from you another day." With that, he turned around and left. At this time, Xianxia suddenly said, "Can you let me feel that mysterious space-time?" Yi Xian turned to look at Xianxia and said with a smile, "There's no other way." Xianxia frowned. "Is there no other way?" Yi Xian nodded. "There's no other way." He was not lying. There was only one way to feel the mysterious space-time, and that was to fuse with Xiaota. Of course, he would not allow Xiaota to merge with this woman. Xianxia licked the sugar-coated haws without saying anything. Yi Xian smiled. "Miss Xianxia, can you tell me more about this realm?" Xianxia asked, "What realm?" Yi Xian said, "The realm above life spirit." Xianxia said, "Above the life soul is the life god, which is also the life providence, life body, and life soul. Once they are all mastered, they will be the life god." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Is there any difference between a life god and a life soul?" Xianxia smiled and said, "The first step is to condense a fate matrix, then a life body, and finally a life soul. After all three are successfully condensed, if they can be perfectly fused again, they can reach the life god level. Once you become a life god, it will be very difficult for you to die." As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. "Just like how you threw me into the space-time abyss, the space-time abyss can no longer hurt me." Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, "Miss Fierce Ho, are you a fate god?" Xianxia shook her head and smiled, "I'm a void life realm above life god." Yi Xian frowned. "Ethereal life? What does it have to do with my life?" Xianxia laughed. "Up until now, no one has been able to escape the grasp of fate. Aside from eternal life, the ultimate goal of any living being that cultivates is to escape the control of fate." Yi Xian said solemnly, "No one can escape the grasp of fate?" Xianxia nodded. "For now, no." Yi Xian was a little curious. "Who created these realms?" Ferocious Ho was silent. Yi Xian laughed. "You don't know either?" Xianxia said, "The creator of the life god realm is Ji Xian, an exalted immortal. Among countless youths, the highest realm was the life spirit realm, and Ji Xian opened up a new realm based on this foundation, which was the life god realm. The so-called life god realm has a special characteristic. First, it's very hard to injure it with normal power. For example, even the terrifying power in the space-time abyss can't hurt a life god realm cultivator." Yi Xian asked again, "What about those above life god?" Xianxia said, "Essence soul realm." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Essence soul realm?" Xianxia laughed. As she spoke, she opened her palm, and there was a small golden person in her palm. This small golden person looked exactly like her. Yi Xian was a little curious. "What is this?" Xianxia said, "This is the Essence Soul realm. Those who reach the Essence Soul realm can cultivate the Essence Soul, and this Essence Soul is equivalent to a second life." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "A second life?" Xianxia nodded and laughed. "It's not just a second life. This Essence Soul has many other benefits. You will know when you reach the Essence Soul realm. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. Yi Xian said solemnly, "You are at the Essence Soul realm?" Xiongho laughed. This Essence Soul realm was created by a genius who cultivated painstakingly. The Life God realm had been a bottleneck for nearly 1,000,000 years until the appearance of this painstakingly cultivation. He opened up a new realm based on the Life God realm, which is the Essence Soul realm. When she spoke up to this point, she smiled and said, "Those who established a realm are also called pioneers, and every single one of them is worthy of our respect." Yi Xian was a little curious. "What is the highest realm now?" Xiongho glanced at Yi Xian. "What are you asking about?" Yi Xian said, "I'm curious." Xiongho laughed. Above the Essence Soul realm is life knowledge. This realm has a particularly terrifying feature, and that is they can foresee their own death. Yi Xian was struck dumb. Then he said, "You can predict your own death?" Xiongho nodded. This kind of expert is very terrifying because they can foresee danger. Apart from that, some of their methods can also be described as unfathomable. Yi Xian asked again, "What about above the life knowledge realm?" Xiongho smiled and said, "For now, the life-knowing realm is the limit. In a faraway place, many life-knowing realm experts are opening up a new realm. Whoever can open up a new realm will have his name spread through the ages." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." Xiongho said, "I've never seen the mysterious space inside your body. Is the person behind you at the life knowledge realm?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "Guess." Xiongho curled her lips. "In any case, the highest he can go is no higher than the life knowledge realm." Yi Xian laughed and said nothing more. He turned and left. Life knowledge? He knew that Qing'er's realm was definitely higher than the life knowledge realm. However, he didn't know what realm Qing'er had reached. From the beginning, no matter how much he improved, he felt that Qing'er was unfathomable. Realm? Qing'er had jumped out of the so-called realm. Behind him, Xiongho glanced at Yi Xian and frowned. Could he really be at the life knowledge realm? Yi Xian returned to his room and sat cross-legged on the floor. He opened his palm, and the Qingxian sword appeared in his hand. With his current strength, he could fight a primordial soul realm powerhouse. However, he was not confident that he could win. Moreover, primordial spirit experts had 2 lives. After a long silence, Yi Xian tried to get in touch with the mysterious space-time abyss. After reaching the life god realm, one could ignore the space-time abyss. A normal space-time abyss was no threat to a powerhouse like Xiongho, but what about this mysterious space-time abyss? In the following time, Yi Xian began to get in touch with the mysterious space-time abyss. His goal now was to understand the space-time abyss thoroughly. On this day, a middle-aged man arrived above the women's college. Behind him were 2 old men. The middle-aged man looked down at the women's college and chuckled. Mysterious space-time. Interesting. The old man on the left of the middle-aged man said in a deep voice, "Sect master, there's something fishy about this." The middle-aged man was the sect master of the Tendo sect, Mu Tianming. Mu Tianming chuckled. "Back then, our Tendo sect and the Azure sect worked together to seal this Xiongho. We used more than a dozen special space-time to completely seal it. But now, our special space-time was broken by that young man's mysterious space-time. This is not simple." The old man said, "As far as I know, the Divine Lady of the Azure sect has already come into contact with this young man." "This chapter is not finished, please continue." Mu Tianming said, "She must have failed. That's why she leaked this information to our Tendo sect, hoping that our Tendo sect will be the vanguard." The old man said in a deep voice, "Then will sect master be the vanguard?" Mu Tianming smiled. "Depends." With that, he disappeared and reappeared in the women's college. Miss Ding, who was reading a book, raised her head to look at Mu Tianming, and she felt a slight headache. It's only been a few days, yet another enemy has arrived. Mu Tianming sized Miss Ding up, and then he said, "Miss, I'm only here to meet that young man." Miss Ding smiled. "You want the mysterious space-time within him?" Mu Tianming smiled. Yes, I want to meet him. Miss Ding thought for a moment and said, he's cultivating right now. Mu Tianming smiled. He sized up the surroundings and said, this place is very ordinary, but the Divine Lady and the Divine Quilt returned without accomplishing anything. As he spoke, he gazed at Miss Ding. I heard that you possess a mysterious sword light. Miss Ding smiled. Don't tell me you want to experience it? Mu Tianming smiled. Miss, do you think that sword light can protect all of you? Miss Ding shook her head. I have a slight headache. Mu Tianming smiled. Miss, you're a smart person. You should know that in his hands, that space-time will only harm him. Meanwhile, Yi Xian appeared by Miss Ding's side. Miss Ding smiled. I came to look for you. Yi Xian glanced at Mu Tianming, and then he said, Aunt Ding, you know how difficult it is for me right now, right? There's no lack of enemies no matter where I go. Miss Ding blinked. Don't you think that all of your enemies are very retarded? Yi Xian was speechless. The smile on Mu Tianming's face vanished when he heard this. Yi Xian felt quite embarrassed as well. He glanced at Mu Tianming and said, Aunt Ding, he's still here. You have to give him some face. Miss Ding shook her head. I don't care. Just play with him yourself. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Don't, Aunt Ding. That fellow's cultivation is much higher than mine. You. Miss Ding turned around to look at Yi Xian and interrupted Yi Xian. If you can't even deal with a retard like that, then how can you surpass your father? I believe that you can do it. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, Mu Tianming suddenly smiled and said, I'm retarded? Miss Ding turned around to look at Mu Tianming. Aren't you? Mu Tianming shook his head and smiled. How interesting. How truly interesting. What right does an ant like you have to look down on someone that's 10,000 times stronger than you? Just because you have a mysterious ray of sword light in your hand? Do you think that mysterious ray of sword light can protect you? How many times can you use such a consumable? You. Miss Ding suddenly smiled and said, I'm sorry, but I can use it countless times. As she spoke, she opened her palm, and a ray of sword light suddenly flew out. Mu Tianming didn't even have time to react before the ray of sword light pierced through his forehead. Bang! Mu Tianming's body instantly became illusory. Mu Tianming was stunned. He'd been instantly killed. Mu Tianming gazed at Miss Ding. Whose sword light is that? Miss Ding smiled. It's my man's. P.S. Do you celebrate the new year? End of this chapter. Chapter 1924. At this moment, Mu Tianming's body was becoming more and more illusory. However, just when he was about to vanish completely, a ray of golden light suddenly flew out and vanished into the horizon. An essence spirit. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. Aunt Ding, that's his essence spirit. He's trying to escape. Aunt Ding smiled. It's fine. It's fine? Yi Xian was stunned. At this moment, Mu Tianming's essence spirit was suddenly pierced by a ray of sword light. Mu Tianming's essence spirit dissipated. He was completely dead. Miss Ding looked at Yi Xian. Come with me. With that, she turned around and left. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before following her. On the other side, Xiong Ho was silent for a moment before she said, How amazing! With that, she turned around and left. Shen Qin withdrew her gaze from the clouds, and her expression was solemn. Mu Tianming had been instantly killed. How could they continue? After a moment of silence, she said, We can't afford to offend that woman. The old man said in a low voice, Divine daughter, what should we do now? Shen Qin's expression was slightly unsightly. Give up? She was naturally unwilling, but if they didn't give up, how could they deal with that woman? Shen Qin sighed softly. At this moment, the old man suddenly said, Yi Xian can't stay in the academy forever. Shen Qin was slightly stunned, and then she said softly, That's true. As she spoke, she looked at the academy below. That woman had a life-saving sword light, but Yi Xian didn't. If Yi Xian left the academy, then it would be their chance. After a moment of silence, Shen Qin turned to look at the old man. Mu Tianming is dead, and the Tendo sect won't let the matter rest. Keep an eye on their movements. The old man bowed slightly. Understood. With that, he turned around and left. Shen Qin looked down at the academy with a slightly unsightly expression. Within the academy, Miss Ding brought Yi Xian to the back of a mountain. She was silent along the way. Yi Xian felt slightly uneasy. Would Aunt Ding feel that he was too comfortable right now and want to find trouble for him? That was quite possible. At this moment, Miss Ding suddenly said, "What do you plan to do next?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "I want to cultivate here." Glancing at Yi Xian, Miss Ding shook her head and smiled. "You are taking this place as a safe haven, aren't you?" Yi Xian said with a bitter smile. "Aunt Ding, are you going to kick me out?" Miss Ding laughed and said, "I want you to go to a place to do something. Are you willing?" Miss Ding, "I want you to do something. Are you willing?" Yi Xian, Miss Ding, "What?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, "What is it?" Yi Xian, Yi. Yi Xian, Yi. Shui. Miss Ding said solemnly, "She's in a bit of trouble right now. I hope that you can help her." Ding Yi to spirit. Ding. Ding, ding, ding. Miss Ding nodded, yes. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, "Doesn't Big Sister Shui have a father?" Miss Ding smiled and said, "Your father has gone to a very, very far place. He can't care about this place for the time being. So, I can only let you go." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Since it's Big Sister Shui's problem, then I'll naturally lend a hand. However, Aunt Ding, you also know that my strength is weak. I'm afraid that if I go, not only will I not be able to help Sister Shui, but I will also become a burden to her." Miss Ding laughed and said, "You want benefits?" Yi Xian hurriedly shook his head. "If I still want benefits from helping a family, then wouldn't I be worse than an animal?" Miss Ding smiled and said, "Your biggest weakness now is the problem of your realm." As she spoke, she pondered for a moment and said, "You are now in the seamless realm. It won't be difficult for you to reach the seamless Dao." Yi Xian quickly said, "Really?" Miss Ding nodded, "I'll help you attain the seamless realm." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Thank you, Aunt Ding." Miss Ding said, "Come with me." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Yi Xian hurriedly followed her. It didn't take long for Miss Ding to bring Yi Xian to an expanse of starry sky. She glanced at the surroundings before she gazed at Yi Xian. "You can devour sword energy to increase your cultivation, right?" Yi Xian nodded. Miss Ding opened her palm, and a strand of sword energy appeared there. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically when he witnessed this scene, and he hurriedly said, No. Aunt Ding, I can't devour my father's sword energy." Miss Ding smiled, "Why?" Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, "I won't be able to endure it if the level of the sword energy is too high." Miss Ding smiled, "It's fine. You can devour it slowly." Yi Xian intended to say something else when the sword energy in Miss Ding's hand suddenly entered his body. Bang! Yi Xian's body trembled violently. In an instant, countless strands of sword energy had actually appeared throughout his body. Yi Xian was horrified, and he hurriedly sat down cross-legged before slowly pressing down with his hands. At this moment, he'd utilized the mysterious space. However, he noticed that the strand of sword energy was actually unable to suppress even the mysterious space. Damn it! My father is quite ferocious. Meanwhile, Miss Ding suddenly said, "Calm your mind." Yi Xian hurriedly did as he was told, and he gradually noticed that the strand of sword energy within his body was actually dissipating by itself and allowing him to absorb it. Yi Xian instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he sensed this scene. Under normal circumstances, he would absolutely be unable to endure this strand of sword energy from his father. Fortunately, he had Aunt Ding's help. Just like that, with Miss Ding's help, Yi Xian started to devour the strand of sword energy bit by bit, and the aura he emanated gradually grew stronger and stronger. On the other side, Xianxia sat cross-legged in her room with her eyes slightly closed. Her entire body was emitting a blood-red flame. After an unknown period of time, Xianxia slowly opened her eyes, and the flames around her suddenly surged. However, as she pressed down with her right hand, the flames around her instantly vanished. At this moment, a woman suddenly appeared behind her. The woman bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Lord Xiong." Xianxia said indifferently, "How is it?" Wuxian said, "Lord Xiong, I found him." After saying that, she placed a black scroll in front of Xianxia. Xianxia opened it, and after a long time, she frowned slightly. "A woman in a plain dress?" Wuxian nodded. "There are two people behind that young Master Yi. One is that woman in a plain dress, and the sword in his hand seems to have been forged by this woman. Apart from this woman in a plain dress, there's also a man in a green shirt. The man in green shirt seems to be young Master Ye's father." Xianxia said, "Do you have detailed information on these two people?" Wuxian shook her head. "I can't find them." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "You can't find them?" Wuxian nodded. "These two people are extremely mysterious. Among them, the woman in the plain dress who appears the most in the eyes of the world is also very mysterious. I only know that she only uses one sword to kill people." Xianxia frowned slightly. "One sword?" Wuxian nodded slightly. "One sword." Xianxia's lips curled up slightly. "Killing people with one sword, interesting." Wuxian said solemnly, "Lord Xiong, this young man's background is extremely mysterious, especially the sword in his hand. It can actually ignore any space-time pressure and space-time abyss. Apart from that, his bloodline is also extremely special. As of now, this subordinate has never seen a bloodline that is more powerful than his." Xianxia was silent. Wuxian said again, "Lord Xiong, there's one more thing. This women's academy's dean is extremely not simple. We can't underestimate him." Xianxia asked, "What do you mean?" Wuxian said solemnly, "His background is also very mysterious, and he's extremely powerful. As for how strong he is, I haven't found out yet. However, we can't underestimate him." Xianxia was silent for a long time, then said, "In that case, this little brother Yi has a group of terrifying people behind him. However, logically speaking, with such a powerful background, it shouldn't be unknown." Wuxian nodded, "Yes." Xianxia laughed. "It's getting more and more interesting." Wuxian retreated to the side and did not speak anymore. After a while, Xianxia suddenly laughed. "Wuxian, do you think it's possible that the plain-dressed woman and the green-robed man have surpassed the life-knowing realm?" Wuxian shook her head. "Absolutely impossible. If the two of them had surpassed the life-knowing realm, they would have long been famous. But the fact is, we haven't even heard of them." Speaking up to here, she paused and said, "At most, life-knowing realm. At most, life-knowing realm. That was already a very high estimate. One must know that in this world, life-knowing realm was as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns." At this moment, the space in front of Wuxian suddenly trembled. After a while, Wuxian looked at Xianxia. "Lord Xiong, that young Master Yi has come out of seclusion. And now, he has reached the seamless Dao." Xianxia frowned slightly. "He has reached the seamless Dao?" Wuxian nodded. "Not only that, but he has also left the women's academy." Xianxia immediately stood up. "He has left the women's academy?" Wuxian nodded. "Yes." Xianxia said, "Follow him in secret. Don't show yourself." With that, she suddenly vanished. As for Wuxian, she also quietly disappeared. Somewhere in the clouds, an old man appeared behind Xianxia, and the old man said in a low voice, "Goddess, I just received news that young Master Yi has left the women's academy." Xianxia opened her eyes. "He has left the academy?" The old man nodded. "Yes." Xianxia said, "Did Miss Ding follow him?" The old man shook his head. "No." Xianxia frowned slightly. "He actually didn't follow? Isn't he afraid of death?" The old man said, "Lord Xiong has also left the women's academy." Xianxia said in a low voice, "That damned woman can really endure." She actually hasn't made a move yet. The old man hesitated and said, I'm afraid she wants us to make the first move. Xianxia nodded. That woman is extremely vicious. Inform the sect of Tendo that Yi Xian has left the women's academy. In any case, she wouldn't make the first move. The old man nodded. Understood. With that he turned and left. Within the women's academy, Miss Ding looked up at the strand of sword light that had vanished in the horizon, and she said softly, I've finally sent that troublesome fellow away. Little fellow, take care on your journey. Chapter 1925. Not long after Yi Xian left the women's college, Xiongho appeared behind him. Xiongho rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. Brother Yi, why didn't you inform me when you were leaving? That's not good enough. Yi Xian smiled. Miss Xiongho, you really want to rely on me. Xiongho giggled. I like to follow you. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, Miss Xiongho, I have a suggestion. Xiongho glanced at Yi Xian. What suggestion? Yi Xian said seriously, your main target is my mysterious spacetime. You don't want to be my enemy. Am I right? Xiongho nodded, yes. But you are not willing to give it to me. Yi Xian said with a smile, we can cooperate. Xiongho frowned, cooperation? Yi Xian nodded, cooperation. Xiongho said solemnly, how? Yi Xian smiled, I will share the mysterious time and space with you, and you will give me benefits. Xiongho looked at Yi Xian, what benefits? Yi Xian shrugged, I don't care, it depends on what you give me. Xiongho smiled, you are so cunning. Yi Xian smiled, Miss Xiongho, what do you think of my suggestion? Xiongho was silent for a moment, what do you want? Yi Xian asked, what can you give me? Xiongho said, I can give you a lot of women. Yi Xian said subconsciously, how many? Speaking of this, he seemed to think of something and flew into a rage. Miss Xiongho, please don't insult my character. I, Yi Xian, am not interested in women. Xiongho curled her lips. I don't believe you. Yi Xian, Xiongho said, I also have a suggestion, listen to it. Your mysterious space-time is very precious, and I don't have any divine items of equal value to exchange with you. So, what I mean is, you lend it to me for research and I will help you fight and help you advance to the life-soul realm, or even the life-god realm. Of course, it is also possible to advance to the primordial soul realm. After all, your talent is extremely good, the best I've ever seen. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. You're really good at bluffing. After speaking, he increased his speed and disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Xiongho hurriedly followed. Xiongho walked to Yi Xian, then you can tell me your conditions. Yi Xian smiled and said, Miss Xiongho, do you know about the extreme heaven realm? Xiongho frowned slightly. Are you going to the ultimate heaven realm? Yi Xian nodded. Xiongho's expression became a little strange. Yi Xian asked, what's wrong? Xiongho said in a low voice, do you know what that place is? Yi Xian shook his head, I don't know. Xiongho shook her head, I advise you not to go. Yi Xian was puzzled, why? Xiongho said calmly, it's a very chaotic place. How chaotic is it? Let me put it this way, you will see the darkest side of human nature there. Moreover, there are a lot of powerhouses there because there are divine crystals there, a kind of divine item that can make people reach the knowing realm after swallowing it. Of course, it requires a lot, so some top powerhouses struggle there every day, trying to save enough divine crystals to reach the knowing realm. Yi Xian was speechless. Why did Sister Shui go there? Xiongho licked her candied fruit and said, with your current strength, going there? Saying that, she shook her head. Yi Xian was speechless. Xiongho continued, moreover, you have a bunch of divine items, whether it is your sword, your tower, or the mysterious spacetime, they all have a fatal attraction to the monsters there. If you go there, you will be like a sheep entering a pack of wolves. Saying that, she seemed to think of something and frowned, why do you dare to go there? Yi Xian smiled bitterly, my sister seems to be in trouble there. Xiongho glanced at Yi Xian, I think you are not going to save people, but to die. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Miss Xiongho, with your strength, can you beat everyone there? Xiongho blinked. Of course. Yi Xian glanced at Xiongho, a little doubtful. Is it true? Xiongho was a little dissatisfied. You think I am not strong? Yi Xian was silent and did not speak again. Xiongho smiled slightly and did not speak again. She wanted Yi Xian to ask for her help first, so that she could take the initiative. However, she did not expect that Yi Xian did not speak. Yi Xian was a little speechless, really speechless. Before coming out, Aunt Ding told him that the extreme heaven realm was very safe, and there was not much danger. On the other side, Shen Qin looked at Yi Xian and Xiongho in the distance and frowned. Is this guy going to the extreme heaven realm? The extreme heaven realm. That was not an ordinary place. Even experts at her level and Xiongho's level could not be said to be absolutely safe there. As for Yi Xian, why would this guy dare to go there? Without thinking too much, she still followed. 2 hours later, Yi Xian arrived at the extreme heaven realm. As soon as he entered the extreme heaven realm, Yi Xian frowned because he smelled a pungent smell of blood. Beside Yi Xian, Xiongho pointed into the distance. Do you see that city? Yi Xian looked into the distance and saw a big city standing in the starry sky. However, this city was a little strange, and there was a constant evil aura and blood aura drifting in the city. With one look, one could tell that this was not a good place. Xiongho glanced at Yi Xian. You can still make it if you leave now. Yi Xian smiled and said, Why should I leave? After saying that, he walked into the distance. After a moment of silence, Xiongho followed. Yi Xian arrived in front of the city gate. When he arrived at the city gate, his expression gradually became solemn. This city was actually dark red in color. Upon closer inspection, it was blood. This city was actually dyed red with blood. The whole city was incomparably gloomy. Beside Yi Xian, Xiongho smiled and said, Young Master Yi, I still have something to do, so I will take my leave now. After saying that, she turned and disappeared. Seeing this, Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. Damn it, this woman definitely did it on purpose. Now came the problem. Should he go in or not? Yi Xian glanced at the city, and without thinking much, he walked in. As soon as he entered the city, more than 10 divine senses swept over. Each divine sense was at least at the life god realm. Sensing this scene, Yi Xian felt a headache. No matter how much his strength increased, his enemies would always be much stronger than him. When could he be like Qing? If he encountered an enemy, he would ask, Where is your home? It would be difficult. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. Now, the most important thing was to find Sister Xue and leave with her. At this moment, a bloody head suddenly fell in front of Yi Xian. The head was still bleeding and obviously, it had just fallen off the neck. Yi Xian was speechless. Was it really that violent? At this moment, a woman suddenly walked from the street in the distance. The woman held a sword in her hand, and there was a trace of blood on the tip of the sword. Obviously, she was the one who chopped off the head. The woman wore a tight black robe, the robe tightly wrapped around her graceful body. It was extremely hot and alluring, and her appearance was also extremely beautiful, but it was extremely cold. Her eyes were like 10,000-year-old ice, without a trace of emotion. Yi Xian glanced at the sword in the woman's hand and didn't speak. The woman walked over to Yi Xian and looked at Yi Xian as she opened her palm. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he took out a candied fruit and gave it to the woman. The woman stared at Yi Xian and didn't speak. At this moment, the head in front of him suddenly trembled, and then a spatial ring floated out from the head and fell firmly into the woman's hand. Yi Xian was slightly embarrassed. So, she didn't want something from me, so he hurriedly put the candied fruit away. At this moment, there were still over a dozen divine senses on him. After the woman put the spatial ring away, she glanced at Yi Xian, and then she walked over to Yi Xian. Yi Xian was about to speak, but the woman suddenly drew her sword, and it swept across Yi Xian's throat. She withdrew her sword. She turned around and left. Her movements were as smooth as flowing water. However, she suddenly stopped after taking a few steps, and she turned around to look at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian was completely fine, and there was no mark on his throat at all. The woman frowned slightly when she saw this. Xiong Ho frowned in the dark. How is this possible? The swordsman woman was a life god, and she was a swordsman. Her combat strength far surpassed ordinary life gods, and she hadn't held back in that attack, but Yi Xian was completely fine. It was too strange. It wasn't just Xiong Ho, even some experts in the dark were puzzled. On the street, Yi Xian rubbed his throat lightly, and then he looked at the swordsman woman and smiled. That's it. The woman gazed at Yi Xian in silence for a moment, and then she suddenly charged forward. A ray of sword light flashed, and she was already behind Yi Xian when the ray of light vanished, and a sword was stuck between Yi Xian's brows. The sword was swift. Right at this moment, the woman suddenly frowned, and she turned around to look at Yi Xian. At this moment, the sword stuck between Yi Xian's brows was gradually vanishing, but Yi Xian was completely fine. The woman stared fixedly at Yi Xian as if she was trying to see through Yi Xian. At this moment, the entire street was deathly silent. All the experts in the dark were dumbfounded. Xiong Ho's face was filled with disbelief. He's actually fine? He's fine after being stabbed in the head? Is this guy the reincarnation of the sword god? On the street in the distance, Yi Xian had completely absorbed the sword in the woman's hand. His body trembled, and after a moment he greedily breathed in. This feels so good. Behind Yi Xian, the swordsman looked at Yi Xian with a trace of fear in her eyes. The first strike was just a casual one, and Yi Xian was fine. She thought that Yi Xian had used some secret technique to evade her sword, and the second strike was her full strength. She did not hold back at all. Most importantly, the guy in front of her did not dodge, nor did he use any secret technique. He took her sword head-on. How did he do it? Thinking of this, the fear in the woman's eyes increased a little. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned to look at the swordsman. He looked at the swordsman and smiled. Since I reached destiny knowledge, no one has attacked me for 1,000,000 years. Little girl, you're the first. Destiny knowledge state. As soon as he said this, the scene instantly became silent, and the divine senses on Yi Xian's body instantly retreated like the tide. The swordsman's expression froze, and her hands began to tremble. In the dark, Xiong Ho's eyes were wide open, and she did not even lick the candied hawthorn. Chapter 1926. Destiny Realm? The moment Yi Xian said that, the experts in the dark were dumbfounded. What kind of existence was the Destiny Realm? It was the strongest expert in the world. Moreover, these Destiny Realm experts were extremely rare, even in the Extreme Heaven Realm. This was because the Extreme Heaven Realm was a group of people who wanted to reach the Destiny Realm. But now, there was a Destiny Realm expert here? But didn't this guy just reach the seamless path? Was he pretending to be weak? Opposite Yi Xian, the female swordsman's expression was extremely ugly. Did I really meet a Destiny Realm expert? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm and a portrait appeared in his hand. It was Sister Shue's portrait. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Do you recognize this person? The woman looked at the portrait and hesitated for a while before saying, Senior, are you here for her? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. The woman said in a deep voice, This woman has escaped to the dark forest. Dark forest? Yi Xian frowned. Where is the dark forest? The woman pointed to a distance. 8,000 miles away from the city. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. After saying that, he turned around and left. At this moment, the woman suddenly said, You're not going to kill me? Yi Xian turned around and looked at the woman. I never kill women. After saying that, he turned around and left. The woman looked at Yi Xian and heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped in his tracks. The woman's expression suddenly changed. This guy wouldn't go back on his words, right? Yi Xian looked at the woman. I'm not familiar with this place. Come with me. I'll give you some pointers on Sword Dao. The woman looked at Yi Xian. She hesitated for a while before saying, Senior, Yi Xian frowned. But you're not willing? The woman quickly said, I'm willing. Yi Xian nodded. Follow me. The woman glanced at Yi Xian and then followed him. Along the way, the woman did not dare to speak. She was already traumatized by those 2 swords just now. In the dark, some of the experts didn't dare to follow Yi Xian anymore. Regardless of whether this young man was in the life-knowing state or not, he was definitely not someone they could provoke. After walking for a short while, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. Not far in front of him, a man was standing there with a knife in his hand. Next to him was a bloody corpse. The corpse was still bleeding from its throat. Obviously, it had just been killed. At this moment, the man suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian and the woman. When he saw Yi Xian, he frowned. Seamless Dao? As he spoke, the corners of his mouth curled up into a strange smile. Yi Xian smiled and turned to the woman. Kill her. The woman was stunned. You're not going to kill him, but you want me to? Yi Xian looked at the woman. What? Is there a problem? The woman hesitated for a moment before she said, all right. She suddenly vanished on the spot as she spoke, and then a ray of light flashed. The man frowned slightly. Shuang, what's wrong with you? As he spoke, he suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Bang! An expanse of light erupted from the sword and blade, and then both of them retreated explosively. The woman called Shuang was about to attack again. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, Come, try using the sword I forged. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and the azure sword flew over to Shuang. Shuang glanced at Yi Xian, and then she held the sword in her hand. She didn't think too much about it before she vanished on the spot. A wisp of ferocity flashed through the man's eyes. Have you gone mad? As he spoke, he slashed down with his sword. Bang! An expanse of light suddenly shattered, and the man retreated explosively. This chapter isn't over. Please continue. As he retreated, his body instantly shattered. It wasn't just his body, even his soul had instantly become ethereal as if it had become transparent. Shuang was stunned. As if she'd thought of something, she looked down at the azure sword in her hand, her face filled with disbelief. She'd killed this guy with a single slash? After all, this man's strength was on par with hers. They'd fought each other in the past, but neither of them could do anything to the other. Yet she'd killed this guy with a single slash just now. It was because of the sword. Shuang looked at the sword in her hand, her heart filled with shock. At the same time, she became slightly fearful of Yi Xian. In the distance, the man was completely stunned as well. He looked at Shuang in disbelief. Shuang didn't speak. She turned and walked over to Yi Xian, returning the sword to Yi Xian. Senior, Yi Xian put the azure sword away, and then glanced at the man. Everything on him belongs to you. As he spoke, he walked off into the distance. Shuang hesitated for a moment before following him. At that moment, the man who was about to disappear suddenly asked, Who is he? Shuang glanced at the man. This senior is at the life-knowing state. You idiot! With that, she hurriedly followed Yi Xian. Life-knowing state. The man was petrified. He'd actually attacked a life-knowing state boss just now? Soon, the man completely disappeared. In the dark, Xiong Ho was silent. That sword was too terrifying. Especially in the hands of a swordsman at Shuang's level, the increase in combat strength would be too terrifying. Xiong Ho was slightly displeased because the plot was a little different from what she'd imagined. Originally, she'd thought that this guy wouldn't even be able to survive for 15 minutes after leaving with her, and then he'd ask her for help. However, she hadn't expected that this guy would actually pretend to be a life-knowing state expert. Moreover, he'd even found a bodyguard. Most importantly, that swordsman actually believed that he was at the life-knowing state. This world was too crazy. After a moment, Xiong Ho looked into the distance and said, Let's see how long you can pretend for. In the distance, after Shuang caught up to Yi Xian, she was even more respectful towards Yi Xian. This was really a boss. If she had that sword from before, then she was even confident in her ability to kill an Origin Spirit Realm expert. Meanwhile, Yi Xian spoke abruptly, Miss Shuang, Why are the people here pursuing the person I'm looking for? Shuang was stunned. Senior, you don't know? Yi Xian shook his head. Shuang spoke solemnly. I thought you were doing it for the Heaven's Supreme Crystal Mine in her possession. Yi Xian frowned slightly. A Heaven's Supreme Crystal Mine? Shuang nodded. A Heaven's Supreme Crystal Mine appeared on Sky Pillar Mountain Range, and many people fought for it. Unfortunately, it fell into that young lady's hands in the end. Those people naturally wouldn't let it go, so they joined forces against her. In the end, she had no choice but to flee into Dark Forest. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Is Dark Forest very dangerous? Shuang glanced at Yi Xian. It's naturally not dangerous to you, Senior. But it's extraordinarily dangerous to us. As she spoke, she hesitated for a moment and said, Senior, are you here to help that young lady? Yi Xian smiled. I'll see. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Shuang glanced at Yi Xian once more, and then he hurriedly followed after Yi Xian. All along the way, no one came out to look for trouble with Yi Xian again. Obviously, the death of the man from before had deterred the experts in the dark. On the other hand, Yi Xian was growing more and more arrogant as he walked. He had no choice but to act arrogantly right now. He had to act well, otherwise he would become an idiot. More and more people appeared in the dark. However, none of them dared to get close to Yi Xian, nor did they dare to sweep Yi Xian with their divine sense. Obviously, they were afraid of Yi Xian. Please continue to the next page if this chapter isn't finished. Destiny Realm. Who wouldn't panic? Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings with a faint smile on his face, and he seemed calm and composed. Shuang followed slowly behind him with a respectful expression on his face. As they were about to leave the city, Yi Xian stopped in his tracks. In front of the city gate stood an old man. The old man wore a long black robe, and his hands were hidden in his sleeves. His expression was cold and gloomy. Beside Yi Xian, Shuang said in a low voice, Old Man Xuanji is a big shot in the city. Primordial Spirit Realm. Big shot? Yi Xian smiled and looked at Old Man Xuanji. What's the matter? Old Man Xuanji looked at Yi Xian. Are you a Destiny Realm expert? Yi Xian asked in return. Do you have a problem with that? His tone was unfriendly. Old Man Xuanji said, I wouldn't dare. Before Old Man Xuanji could finish speaking, Yi Xian suddenly walked slowly towards Old Man Xuanji. He walked very slowly and calmly, as if he was taking a stroll. Seeing this, Old Man Xuanji's eyes narrowed, and his hands that were hidden in his sleeves slowly clenched. He was a little nervous. When Yi Xian was 10 feet away from Old Man Xuanji suddenly took a step forward. In an instant, Yi Xian fell directly into the abyss of 11 layers of space-time, and countless mysterious space-time forces surged madly towards Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian did not panic at all, and he allowed the mysterious forces to surge towards him. Very quickly, Old Man Xuanji's expression changed, because he noticed that Yi Xian was actually completely fine even though he was in the abyss of space-time. Not only that, but the mysterious space-time forces did not harm Yi Xian in the slightest. The expressions of those experts in the dark changed when they saw this scene. This was a real big shot. Old Man Xuanji's expression turned extremely ugly. At this moment, even he was slightly panicking. Yi Xian walked up to Old Man Xuanji. He did not attack, but instead opened his palm and gently guided it. In an instant, a mysterious space-time directly enveloped Old Man Xuanji. Old Man Xuanji's pupils constricted when he was enveloped by the mysterious space-time. This is... A wisp of disdain arose on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth. You actually dare to play with space-time in front of me? Are you joking? Old Man Xuanji immediately bowed respectfully. Senior, I have offended you, please forgive me. Yi Xian laughed coldly, and then he walked out of the city. Su Wang hurriedly followed him. When he saw that Yi Xian did not attack, Old Man Xuanji instantly heaved a heavy sigh of relief, and then he wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He was almost gone. Xiong Ho felt a slight headache in the dark. This old man is an primordial soul realm expert at any rate. Why is he so cowardly? Go on and kill him. She knew that the reason Yi Xian was able to disregard space-time was entirely because of that sword, and not because of his own strength. As for that mysterious space-time, Yi Xian was utterly unable to fully control it. It could be said that Yi Xian was a paper tiger. As long as this old man punched, this fellow would reveal his true colors. But this old man had been frightened. Xiongho shook her head. She really did not expect this fellow to come to this place and actually rely on a trick to survive. In the distance, outside the city, Su Wang suddenly said, "Senior, why don't you kill him?" Yi Xian smiled faintly. "Would you purposely step on an ant to death?" Su Wang was stunned, and then he shook his head. Yi Xian smiled. "Everything in the world is like an ant. If I want to destroy it, I can destroy the heavens with one sword." As he spoke, he looked at Su Wang and smiled. "For the past 1,000,000 years, I have basically not made a move. Do you know why?" Su Wang shook his head. Yi Xian smiled. "I usually do not make a move, but if I do, it will not just be 1 or 2 deaths. I am afraid that if I make a move, an entire universe will be gone." Su Wang. End of this chapter. Chapter 1927. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Xu Wang's expression became even more respectful. She was now convinced that Yi Xian was at the destiny-knowing stage. Even old man profound secrets had bowed to him, so how could it be fake? When the two disappeared into the distance, Xiongho appeared in front of the city gates. Not only her, but goddess Shunqin also appeared beside her. Xiongho glanced at Shunqin, smiled, and said nothing. Shunqin was expressionless. "You're just going to let him keep pretending?" Xiongho hurriedly said, "If you can't stand it, then go and deal with him." Shunqin was silent. She wanted to deal with Yi Xian, but she was also wary. This guy was not a kind soul. Xiongho smiled. "It's fine, let him keep pretending. Let's see how long he can keep pretending." Shunqin turned to look behind her, expressionless. "A bunch of fools." With that, she turned and left. Xiongho shook her head. Actually, if she did not know about Yi Xian's background, she might have been fooled too. Yi Xian's azure profound sword and that mysterious space-time really exceeded the understanding of primordial spirit realm powerhouses. It was also because of this that Yi Xian could fool old man profound secrets. But what puzzled her was why Yi Xian was fine after taking 2 of Xu Wang's swords head-on. How did he do it? Xiongho was puzzled. Under Xu Wang's guidance, Yi Xian arrived at the dark forest. Standing in front of the forest, Yi Xian fell silent. He finally knew why this place was called the dark forest. Because it was really dark. The forest stretched as far as the eye could see, and all the trees were pitch black as if they had been splashed with ink. Yi Xian turned to look at Xu Wang. "Is there anything special about this dark forest?" Xu Wang nodded. "This place is very dangerous because there are spirits of darkness inside, an extremely special kind of being. This dark forest is their territory, and they do not welcome other beings." Yi Xian looked at the dark forest in silence. He wanted to go in, but he knew that once he did, he would probably be in big trouble. Beside him, Su Wang saw that Yi Xian was silent and did not say anything. After a short while, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Miss Hypocrisy, is there a king in this dark forest?" Xu Wang nodded. "The king of darkness is the ruler of the dark forest." Yi Xian nodded. "Understood." As he spoke, he asked again, "Who are these people who are chasing after the woman I'm looking for?" Xu Wang spoke in a low voice. "The most important ones are King Martial Spirit and Zhao Shenxiao. Both of them are peak soul formation realm experts. Besides the 2 of them, there are many other mysterious experts. All of them want to obtain the sky split or in that woman's possession." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." With that, he walked towards the dark forest. Seeing this, Xu Wang hesitated for a moment before he followed. With this senior around, what was there to be afraid of? King of Darkness. In front of a destiny-knowing expert, he was like a little brother. After they stepped foot into the dark forest, Yi Xian frowned because it was extraordinarily cold and gloomy here. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly passed the green profound sword to Xu Wang. Kill anyone that doesn't know what's good for them. Xu Wang hurriedly nodded, and then he received the green profound sword. At the moment she held it in her hand, her bearing had changed completely. Even though she was only at the life god realm, she felt like she was invincible right now. This sword had improved her strength by more than 10 times at the very least. Right at this moment, a black tree in the distance suddenly started wriggling, and then a black figure gradually appeared before them. The figure was completely pitch black, and only its eyes emanated a ghastly blue glow. Xu Wang spoke in a low voice by Yi Xian's side. The spirit of darkness, should we kill him? Yi Xian turned around to glance at Xu Wang, and then he said, we have to convince him with virtue first, and we'll kill him if he's not convinced. Xu Wang nodded, I understand. Yi Xian gazed at the spirit of darkness. I want to see your king. The spirit of darkness ridiculed. See our king? Are you even worthy? Yi Xian turned around to look at Xu Wang. You can kill him now. Xu Wang directly vanished on the spot. The spirit of darkness didn't even have the chance to react before it was wiped out. After he stopped, Xu Wang looked at the green profound sword in his hand, and he was slightly excited. This feeling was simply too awesome. It could be said that he was invincible amongst those of the same realm with this sword. Yi Xian glanced into the distance and he laughed. King of Darkness, you sure are arrogant. His voice was like thunder, and the surrounding tree of darkness trembled violently. However, there was no response. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he took a step forward before he said, King of Darkness, if you don't come out in 10 breaths of time, then I'll flatten your dark forest. Xu Wang's blood started to boil slightly when he heard Yi Xian's words. How domineering! Following a big shot is so awesome. However, there was still no response. Breath after breath passed. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Damn it! Is this fellow really not going to come out? If he doesn't come out, then would I really have to destroy the dark forest? With my current strength, it's quite difficult to flatten the dark forest. Right when 10 breaths of time were about to end, a powerful pressure suddenly appeared here. It's here. Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. At this moment, a middle-aged man appeared not far away from Yi Xian and Xu Wang. The middle-aged man was dressed a little strangely. His hair was standing up like a broom. Not only that, but his clothes were also made of leaves. He looked like a tree ant. Xu Wang, who stood by Yi Xian's side, spoke in a low voice. King of Darkness. King of Darkness glanced at Yi Xian, and then he said, I heard a life-knower realm expert has arrived in the city. Is that you? Yi Xian smiled. This isn't a suitable place to talk. Let's go somewhere else? King of Darkness frowned slightly. Somewhere else? Yi Xian nodded. Come with me. As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and Xiao Ta appeared within it. After that, he brought Xu Wang along with him and entered Xiao Ta. King of Darkness hesitated for a moment, and then he entered Xiao Ta as well. When they entered Xiao Ta, King of Darkness and Xu Wang's expressions instantly changed. King of Darkness glanced at the surroundings, and he felt slight disbelief. The space here is actually completely different from the outside world. Moreover, the flow of time. As he spoke up to this point, he started to speak incoherently, because this had exceeded his understanding. King of Darkness looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. This is a special space that I created. It's usually used by my juniors to cultivate. King of Darkness hesitated for a moment, and then he said, I admire senior's ability. Yi Xian frowned slightly. You don't know? King of Darkness was slightly embarrassed. I'm only at the nascent soul realm, and I haven't come into contact with such a divine ability. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Right? But it's fine, we can take it slowly. King of Darkness hurriedly said, Senior, you're right. Yi Xian made an inviting gesture. Please take a seat. King of Darkness was slightly overwhelmed by the unexpected favor, and he hurriedly said, Senior, please. Smiling, Yi Xian said, Let's sit together. As soon as he finished speaking, he sat down. King of Darkness didn't sit, and he stood instead. Yi Xian gazed at King of Darkness, and King of Darkness hurriedly said, "I like to stand." Yi Xian smiled, "What's your name?" King of Darkness replied, "Mu Senior." Yi Xian nodded, "Mu Senator, I came to Dark Forest this time to look for someone." As he spoke, he opened his palm, and Sister Shue's portrait appeared in his hand. "You should have seen her, right?" Mu Sen was slightly stunned when he saw Sister Shue's portrait. "It's her?" Yi Xian asked, "Do you know her?" Mu Sen nodded, "I have. She came to Dark Forest a month ago, and 2 people were chasing after her." Yi Xian gazed at Mu Sen. "You didn't do anything to her, right?" Mu Sen hurriedly said, No. After she entered Dark Forest, I didn't make things difficult for her. On the contrary, I made her leave." Yi Xian frowned. "She left?" Mu Sen nodded. "She went to the wasteland." Yi Xian felt a headache coming on, and he turned to look at Su Wang. Su Wang spoke in a low voice, "I'm not familiar with the wasteland, and I've only heard of it." As she spoke, she gazed at Mu Sen. "You should be more familiar with the King of Darkness." Mu Sen spoke in a low voice, "The wasteland is slightly special. It's the territory of the wasteland god, and he has an extremely strange temper. He's not easy to get along with." Yi Xian felt a headache coming on. "Do I have to go to the wasteland to act cool again?" He might seem fearless now, but he was actually panicking deep down. Meanwhile, Mu Sen spoke abruptly, "Senior, I'm willing to take you to the wasteland." Yi Xian gazed at Mu Sen. "Won't that be troublesome for you?" Mu Sen grinned, "It's my honor to be able to serve Senior." Yi Xian smiled, "Then I'll be troubling you." As soon as he finished speaking, he led Mu Sen and Su Wang away from Xiaota. After leaving Xiaota, Mu Sen sighed with emotion. The space-time in Xiaota's world was really different from the space-time in reality. As if he'd thought of something, Mu Sen gazed at Yi Xian. "Senior, what's the difference between the space-time in Xiaota's world and the space-time in the outside world?" Yi Xian smiled. 10 years in there is equivalent to a day in the outside world." Mu Sen and Su Wang were dumbstruck when they heard this. 10 years in there is equivalent to a day in the outside world? At this moment, tempestuous waves were surging through their hearts. Even the word, heaven-defying, wasn't enough to describe such a divine treasure. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Is it very difficult?" Mu Sen laughed bitterly, "It's far more than difficult. Perhaps it's very simple for Senior, but it's as difficult as ascending the heavens for us. Especially the space-time in Xiaota's world. I've lived for so long and studied space-time for so long, but I've never seen or heard of such a space-time." Yi Xian smiled. "Actually, it's not that difficult. It's just that both of you haven't come into contact with it." When he spoke up to this point, he paused for a moment before he continued, "Actually, attaining the destiny realm isn't that difficult." As he spoke up to this point, he didn't continue. If he did, then his act of acting tough would be exposed. Mu Sen's expression changed drastically when he saw this. He bowed respectfully to Yi Xian and said, "Please guide me, Senior. If you're able to provide me with some guidance, then I'll never forget your kindness." Yi Xian fell silent. "How the fuck should I guide you?" P.S. Because it's New Year, I've been going around to pay my respects, so I didn't have time to write. So, the explosion on the 15th will be delayed. Everyone, please forgive me. Because I really have to pay my respects everywhere. Everyone who's home understands. Chapter 1928. Instruction. Shuang also looked at Yi Xian with excitement. Instruction from a life-knowing realm big shot. This was a rare opportunity that only appeared once in 10,000 years. While Shuang and Mu Sen were waiting expectantly, Yi Xian smiled. "Then let's talk about the space-time Dao." Mu Sen hurriedly said, "Please instruct us, Senior." Yi Xian looked at Mu Sen and smiled. "I'll just talk about it casually. You two listen as you please. How much you can comprehend will depend on yourselves." As he spoke, he opened his palm and pressed it down lightly. In an instant, a mysterious space-time enveloped Mu Sen and Shuang. Mu Sen and Shuang's expressions changed when they were enveloped by the mysterious space-time. This was a space-time that they had never come into contact with before. Yixian smiled. Do you know what space-time this is? Mu Sen and Shuang shook their heads. Yixian thought to himself, actually, I don't know either. Of course, he couldn't say that. He smiled and said, this is called the Azure space-time, a brand new space-time that I created myself. Mu Sen was shocked. You created it, senior? Yixian nodded. Of course. Mu Sen bowed slightly. Senior's methods are truly mysterious. Shuang was in awe as well, and he admired Yixian even more. Yixian said with a smile, since you are so smart, I won't say anything more. Feel it yourselves. I believe you'll gain a lot. Both of them closed their eyes slowly and sensed Yixian's mysterious space-time. Yixian looked at them and heaved a sigh of relief. Damn it. I'm going to walk the path of acting cool to the end. Not only must I act cool, I must act well. Xiong Ho and Shun Qin looked into the distance, and their expressions were not good. They realized that Mu Sen was actually very respectful to Yixian. Obviously, Mu Sen had been tricked by Yixian as well. Shin Qin said in a low voice, this guy is too good at tricking. Xiong Ho was silent. She was also a little speechless. She had never seen someone so good at bluffing. Meanwhile, Shin Qin spoke in a low voice. The King of Darkness is an idiot as well. He actually believed that this guy was in the life-knowing state. That's too stupid. Xiong Ho glanced at the divine quilt. I think you are the idiot. Shin Qin looked at Xiong Ho with an unfriendly expression. Xiong Ho said, it's not that Old Man Profound and the King of Darkness are stupid, it's that he has that divine sword and that mysterious space-time. Not to mention them, even you and I might be intimidated by him if we don't know his background. The divine quilt fell silent. Xiong Ho continued, of course, this guy is also good at bluffing and he's also very bold. To be honest, I do admire him a little. Shin Qin glanced at Xiong Ho and sneered, admire him? Are you impressed by his ability to fool people? Xiong Ho licked her sugar-coated hawes and then she said, Shin Qin, if you were in the same realm of cultivation as him, then with the level of intelligence you possess, you would probably be completely toyed with by him. Shen Ho was expressionless. You and him are jackals of the same tribe. Xiong Ho laughed, you're just a hypocrite. Shen Qin's eyes narrowed slightly. Let's fight? Xiong Ho shrugged, bring it on. In next to no time, the two of them started fighting. On the other side, Yixian slowly withdrew his right hand, and the mysterious space-time vanished. After a long time, Mu Sen's eyes slowly opened, and he said softly, the Tao of space-time has no end. As he spoke, he looked at Yixian and bowed slightly. Thank you, senior, for sharing this space-time. I've gained a lot. Yixian smiled. It's no big deal. Mu Sen shook his head. It's a small matter to senior, but it's a huge matter to me. No matter what, I, Mu Sen, will never forget Junior's guidance today. Yixian smiled. Then I might have to trouble you to take me to that woman I'm looking for. Mu Sen hurriedly said, of course. Yixian said, let's go. Mu Sen hurriedly led the way. It didn't take long for the three of them to leave the dark forest. All along the way, Mu Sen and Shuang were extremely respectful to Yixian. Now, they firmly believed that Yixian was at the destiny-knowing state. It didn't take long for the three of them to arrive at the wasteland. Yixian looked up, and he couldn't see the end of the boundless wasteland. Moreover, dark gray sand drifted through the sky. Occasionally, violent winds would whistle by, and the sand would instantly cover the entire sky. Mu Sen spoke in a low voice. Senior, the wasteland is up ahead, the territory of the wasteland god. Yixian nodded slightly. Ask him to come out. Mu Sen hesitated for a moment before he said, Senior, the wasteland god has a bad temper, so he might. Yixian suddenly smiled. If he doesn't cooperate, then just kill him. Mu Sen's expression changed slightly. He'd almost forgotten that this was a big shot at the destiny-knowing state. Mu Sen didn't think too much about it, and he looked up into the sky and said, Wasteland God, come out and meet me. There was no response. Mu Sen frowned when he saw this. Mu Sen added, "Wasteland God." His voice rumbled like thunder, and it caused the entire wasteland to tremble violently. Suddenly, a furious shout resounded from afar. "Which bastard dares to bark in my wasteland?" Mu Sen's face instantly darkened when he heard this. Yi Xian gazed at Mu Sen. "Get him." Mu Sen was slightly hesitant. Yi Xian smiled. "What are you afraid of when I'm here?" Mu Sen smiled. "Since Senior has said that, then let's get him." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly charged forward. Bang! In an instant, the sky in the distance dimmed down, and then a powerful force swept through the wasteland like a tide. Suddenly, a furious shout resounded from the depths of the wasteland. "Mu Sen, have you gone mad?" Rumble. The wasteland in the distance suddenly exploded apart, and then a spatial abyss appeared. Mu Sen and the wasteland god stood facing each other within the spatial abyss. The wasteland god stared fixedly at Mu Sen. "Mu Sen, we've always minded our own business. What's gotten into you today?" Mu Sen spoke coldly. "I can't stand the sight of you, all right?" As he spoke, he smashed his fist forward. Bang! The space where the wasteland god resided was instantly transformed into a spatial vortex. A wisp of a ferocious expression flashed through the wasteland god's eyes, and then he charged forward while a powerful force shot out explosively. Rumble! Countless strands of space shattered in the distant sky, and then strands of powerful force surged incessantly towards the surroundings. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he witnessed this scene, because the aftershock of the powerful force was surging towards him. How embarrassing would it be to run? I can only go head-on against it. Yi Xian took a step forward and activated his sword domain. Invincible sword domain. Bang! The space around Yi Xian and Su Wang were instantly obliterated. On the other hand, Yi Xian and Su Wang were completely unscathed. Su Wang gazed at Yi Xian with shock in his heart. As expected of a Destiny Realm expert, he was actually able to remain unmoving under such circumstances. Moreover, that sword domain from before was extremely profound, and it was obvious that it wasn't an ordinary sword domain. He's really a big shot. Yi Xian's face was extremely pale as he stood before Su Wang. Actually, if he were to attack, then the aftershock of the force wouldn't have been sufficient to cause him such internal injuries. However, he couldn't attack. He would definitely be exposed once he attacked. Regardless of whether it was Su Wang or Mu Sen, both of them weren't ordinary figures. So, he could only resist them head-on. Fortunately, he was able to resist them even if he didn't attack. This allowed him to have a rough understanding of his own strength. His true combat strength was still a distance away from these soul formation realm experts, but it wasn't a huge gap. After all, he was able to utilize the spatial pressure of that mysterious space. Right at this moment, Mu Sen and the wasteland god suddenly stopped moving. The wasteland god stared fixedly at Mu Sen. "Mu Sen, have you gone mad?" Mu Sen spoke furiously. "I just can't stand the sight of you." The wasteland god frowned slightly as if he'd thought of something, and then he turned around to look at Yi Xian and Su Wang. His frown deepened when he saw Yi Xian. "The seamless path?" As he spoke, he gazed at Mu Sen. "Why did you bring an ant here?" Mu Sen's expression changed drastically when he heard this. "You're the ant. Your entire family is filled with ants." The wasteland god frowned. "What's wrong with you?" Mu Sen stared fixedly at the wasteland god. "This is Senior Yi Xian. You actually dare to call him an ant? Wasteland god, have you lived for too long?" "Senior?" The wasteland god spoke in a low voice. "Mu Sen, is there something wrong with your brain? You actually called an ant from the seamless path Senior?" Mu Sen glanced coldly at the wasteland god. "You really are an idiot." The wasteland god spoke in a low voice. "Mu Sen, what exactly is wrong with you?" Mu Sen was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly turned around to look at Su Wang. "Kill him." Su Wang was stunned, and then he drew his sword. A strand of sword energy tore through the surroundings. A wisp of viciousness flashed through the wasteland god's eyes. A mere life god realm cultivator dares to attack me? You're courting death. As he spoke, he suddenly took a step forward and smashed his fist forward. Bang! An expanse of sword energy was blasted apart while the wasteland god was pushed over 3 kilometers back. When he finally stopped moving, his entire right arm had been split into 2. The wasteland god was stunned by this scene. My arm was split apart by a single strike from an ant at the life god realm? It wasn't just the wasteland god, even Mu Sin was quite shocked. Su Wang's combat strength actually became so terrifying after he obtained this senior sword? Even though Su Wang was pushed back as well, her eyes were filled with excitement. She was confident in her ability to kill a nascent soul realm expert right now. The boost from the sword in his hand was simply too terrifying. Su Wang was about to attack again, but Yi Xian suddenly said, "Stand down for now." Hearing Yi Xian's words, Wang Ke did not hesitate at all. He turned around and turned into a beam of sword light that landed behind Yi Xian. The wilderness god frowned slightly at the sight of this, and he gazed at Yi Xian. "Who are you?" At this moment, he also realized that Yi Xian was not simple. Yi Xian smiled and looked at Mu Senior. "Aren't you going to introduce us?" Mu Sin was stunned, and then he hurriedly said, "Wasteland God, this is Senior Yi Xian, a fate knower." Fate-knowing state? The wilderness god was stunned when he heard this. Meanwhile, Yi Xian gazed at the wilderness god and said, "Let me ask you a question. I'll obliterate you if you answer me wrongly." As he spoke, he took a step forward, and a mysterious space-time enveloped the god of wilderness. The wasteland god's expression changed drastically. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.